We will make America great again.
RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back. Yes, my friends, to another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you're having a good day. And if you haven't yet, do me a favor. Hit that like button. It's so easy. It's the quickest, easiest, and most cost-effective way to show your support for the show. You just hit that like button. You can feel free to share the show. Put it out there on your favorite social media platform. Speaking of which, let me head on over to my own X account so that I can pin the show to my profile. All right, so Kash Patel continuing, seems like every single day, to find brand new hidden things at the FBI that they tried to keep quiet. Of course, just so happens that every single one of them is a direct knife in the heart to President Trump and the people who love him. So I gotta give props to Kash Patel for continuing to put this information out there. But of course, the question that always comes across my mind is the FBI even reconcilable? Can we bring this back from the brink? Is it possible to rehabilitate this organization? Ooh, buckle brush. That's a tough one, buddy. Hope you don't have to chew anything. All right, you guys, do me a favor. Sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we're going to get into it right after this. So new inflation numbers are out of Washington, and it shows that once again, inflation is on the rise. That's another threat to you, another threat to your savings account, and of course, also your retirement. So you got to ask yourself an honest question here. Does your dollar go as far today as it did 10 years ago? Well, what about 5 years ago, even last year? Then what does the next decade look like for you and your savings? Because if your portfolio lacks exposure to gold, one of history's most reliable economic hedges, it's about time to rethink your strategy, because gold has kept up with inflation, and in many periods, it's actually outpaced it. My friends at Noble Gold Investments specialize in helping people protect their wealth using physical gold and silver. Whether you're going to roll over an IRA or make a direct purchase, their team walks you through the entire process, and they make it super simple. There's no pressure, just education and experience. And right now, all new qualified accounts are going to receive a free 1/10 of an ounce America Gold Eagle as a thank you. To find out, you can visit noblegoldinvestments.com/redpill78 and discover just how easy it is to protect your financial future. Once again, that's noblegoldinvestments.com/redpill78. And when you support my sponsors, you support this channel. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. And a big shout out to Drifter's Life over on Rumble for joining as a monthly supporter. I really do appreciate it. And I got a notification through my Stripe that somebody must have given a large donation. I have to go through the reporting so that I can thank you properly. Thank you very, very much to whomever supported me over there on my website, redpill78news.com/donate. Of course, I don't get notifications here on the show, but every single dollar that you donate through the website goes directly to support the program. So I just want to make sure that I recognize those people in any way that I can. Also, it's your full legal name, and most people don't want me to say their full legal name on the air. So that's why I definitely tend to not do it. But I also need to say thank you to Judy the Lady Pug for the cookie over on Pilled. And, of course, thank you to Smart Poker, who says, good afternoon, Patriots. All right, you guys, we're going to get into it. First of all, today is a special election down in Georgia. If you are a resident of Georgia and you live in the district that Marjorie Taylor Greene used to represent, well, today you have the opportunity until 7 p.m. to elect a new conservative firebrand for your district. And I, for one, if I lived in Georgia, I would be supporting Colton Moore. Colton Moore, believe right now, is currently a Georgia state senator. He has quite literally been at war with the deep state Republican rhino establishment in the state of Georgia since the moment he walked into the legislature. He's been banned. They've tried to have him arrested. He also is somebody who was arrested for supporting President Trump. He was rounded up and charged in that RICO case along with everybody else that supported President Trump down in Georgia. So I think Colton is a great guy. His platform is awesome. He puts it right here so everybody can understand exactly what he is going to be stumping for when he gets to Washington, D.C. Colton says, I am running to be your voice in Washington so I can deport all illegals and secure our borders, expand our Second Amendment rights without compromise, cut taxes and slash spending to fix our economy, and take America back from the radical left. Cast your vote for Colton Moore for Congress. If you want to learn more about Colton Moore, you can head on over to coltonmoore.com/vote. And he's also here on X at Real Colton Moore. And that's Moore. Colton Moore. He's a young man who seems to be totally based. And I've never seen him have a bad take on anything. Anyways, go ahead and check him out. And tell me what you think, and hopefully we'll have some good news tomorrow. I'm glad to see some fresh blood ending up in Washington, D.C., or at least getting closer to ending up in Washington, D.C. We're going to have Brandon Herrera in D.C. We're going to have Colton Moore in D.C. These are going to be some big changes that need to be made. All right. Now, earlier today, there was an active shooter in Baltimore. Seems to be really popping off all across America. Both the officer and the suspect were shot. One police officer was shot and transported to the hospital. The unidentified suspect, as of the writing of this article, is not known to even be alive. I don't know exactly what happened, but usually when people start shooting at cops, they tend to mag dump into the suspect. So I would be very surprised if this guy was alive. So this happened in Baltimore, some random place in Baltimore. Don't really know much more than that. There was some video going around, but nothing really exciting. So I just thought I would mention it in case anybody here is in the Baltimore area. I saw people saying that it took place at a synagogue, but it didn't. It just happened to be in an area where a synagogue is located. So this isn't some hate crime or something like that. It's not related to anything related to that. But of course, people are going to try to jump on something that's going to get them clicks. But I'm here to tell you the real story. All right. Now, we have another case of international terrorism taking place at a U.S. government facility in another nation. Yesterday, it was in Norway. Now, today, it appears to be at the U.S. consulate in Toronto. And the Royal Canadian Mounted Police have confirmed it is a national security incident. This was a brazen early morning attack around 5:30 a.m. local time. There were, of course, no injuries, but as it is a national security incident, the RCMP are investigating, and they believe that it is a fairly serious situation. They're currently collaborating with the Toronto Police, international partners. I would imagine perhaps the Federal Bureau of Investigation may be getting involved as well. But this took place at University Avenue and Queen Street West. I'm not real familiar with Toronto geography, so any Canadian patriots out there who might know where this is or the implications of it, I'm happy to hear from you in my email. But according to Toronto police, officers responded to reports of gunfire at the consulate early this morning. Evidence of a discharged firearm was located at the scene. There were impacts of bullet marks on the building. Seems kind of like a pussy move, if you know what I'm saying. Just drive by and shoot at a random building. Totally ridiculous. Anyways, during a press briefing this morning, the police deputy chief of the Toronto Police, Frank Barreto, revealed that a white Honda CRV pulled up in front of the consulate. Two individuals emerged. One of them fired what appeared to be a handgun in front of the building, and they stated that the RCMP takes threats to the security of individuals living in Canada very seriously, and we want to reassure everyone that there is no indication of an immediate threat to public safety at this time. Let's hear a brief summary of the events from Toronto Police.
Thank you, Deputy. Good morning, everyone.
This is very quiet. Hold on just a second.
My name is Chris Leather. I'm the RCMP Chief Superintendent for Criminal Operations here in Ontario. I'm going to make some formal remarks here, and then I look forward to questions that the media may have afterwards. Our community has experienced a deeply concerning incident, and I want to begin by acknowledging the worry and uncertainty many people are feeling today. Our thoughts are with everyone affected, as well as those who may be feeling unsettled by what has occurred. At this stage, I can confirm that the RCMP is working closely with the Toronto Police Service and our international partners who will assist us in a fulsome investigation into the shooting that took place overnight, early this morning, at the American Consulate behind us. The RCMP's Integrated National Security Enforcement Team, INSET, GTA, has permanent positions for members of the Toronto Police Service, which further increase our capacity to conduct these investigations in real time with established and strong relationships, intelligence sharing, and
I'm sorry, but I can't hear anybody from Canada speak without thinking about Trailer Park Boys. I'm just thinking about Ricky the whole time, and Bubbles and Julian. Anybody else here have that? Anybody from Canada? Does that happen to you when you're talking to people there? Do people talk about Trailer Park Boys? Because I just can't stop thinking about it.
Tactics. At this time, the INSET team has been engaged, as this is a national security incident, and we are working with Toronto Police and others to understand the motivations of those involved.
Oh, come on, Julian.
Regularly works in close
I can almost do a Bubbles.
With police services of jurisdictions across the country, as well as our partners with Global Affairs Canada, in the fulfillment of our mandate to provide protection of designated persons, including foreign diplomats.
You can't fool me. I got my grade 10.
And in relation to incidents that occur at or in the vicinity of embassies or consulates.
Oh my, I'm going to fall asleep listening to this guy. Jeez, oh Pete, has he never done a press conference before? I thought this was a national security incident, guys. Let's get serious about this stuff. Anyways, police are looking for that white Honda CRV. Canada is a fairly well surveilled nation, so I think they're probably going to figure out who it is, unless it happens to be an immigrant, and then they'll probably just let them go. Oh, God, at least nobody was hurt. That's good, and at least it wasn't another bomb. All right, but speaking of bombs, the police body cam that was worn by one of the officers as they were arresting those 18 and 19-year-old terrorists, the ISIS-inspired homegrown terrorists from Pennsylvania in New York over the weekend, caught them saying some pretty disturbing things, making wonderful arguments for us, apparently. All right, so the federal court filing that was put on the record on Monday included details that were present in the body-worn cameras. 18-year-old Amir Balat, as he was being taken into the precinct house, makes it pretty clear that Islamic terrorism is his bag. He's totally down with Islamic terrorism. He said, "This isn't a religion that just stands when people talk about the blessed name of the prophet," Balat said in a recorded statement, according to the prosecution complaint filed in the Southern District of New York. "We take action," he said. "We take action." In Balat's case, authorities assess that action meant building and hurling improvised explosive devices for the express purposes of murdering people that you don't agree with, which is obviously antithetical to the foundations of the United States of America. And what's even more ironic is that it's happening in New York City, of course, where Muslim Mayor Moran Zamdami was recently just elected. It happened right outside of his crib. According to the complaint, the protest, as you probably know, was called the Stop the Islamic Takeover of New York City, Stop New York City Public Muslim Prayer. I got to get somebody working for Jake on these titles, man. That's just a mouthful. Stop the Muzzies. You can just stop right there. Let's just shorten it. You can have the other stuff on the sign that you're going to be holding. The counter protest was not quite as wordy. Run the Nazis out of New York City. These people are caricatures. It's insane to me. Anyways, you know what happened? He lit the bomb. It didn't go off. Thank you, Jesus. Truly, God was with us on that day. The Prophet Muhammad was nowhere to be found. Once he was at the precinct house, Balot made the attack's motivation even clearer when he provided a paper and pen, when the police provided a paper and pen to the suspect, and he said he had pledged his allegiance to the Islamic State terrorist group. All praise is due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, he wrote. I pledge my allegiance to the Islamic State. Die in your rage, you kafar. My God. I mean, obviously this guy is not too big on the United States of America, and I'm glad that he doesn't understand about the Fifth Amendment. Just go ahead and incriminate yourself all day, bro. You can go spend the rest of your life with your heroes at Guantanamo Bay. Nobody is going to miss you. We'll get rid of your family, too. We get a nice multi-million-dollar home, a 5,000-square-foot home in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, that can be purchased by an American family. Totally cool with that. Now, I don't know what kafar is, but apparently it's a term for non-Muslim. Also, it means die in your rage. That's a slogan from the Islamic State. I guess it's part of the Quran. Never read it myself. Besides the Islamist terrorist motivation, Balot also made it clear that he was hoping to murder a lot of people. He seemed to be upset that the bombs didn't go off because he wanted to kill more people than the Boston Marathon. Surprisingly, a lot of people may not know this, but the Boston Marathon only led to 3 deaths, although there was a lot of blood that was on the ground. There were only 3 people who were killed, and it was a fairly large blast. Now, yesterday, we were told that both of these kids were from Afghanistan. That's only half true. Balot's family is of Turkish origin. His parents became naturalized citizens in 2017. So he hasn't been raised here his entire life. But Kayumi's parents, they are from Afghanistan, and they became naturalized in 2004 and 2009. I did read somewhere that Balot's parents, they were actually kicked out of Turkey. So, they were kicked out for being radicals. So what the hell? How did they end up in the United States of America? 2017, that was during President Trump's first term in office. I mean, who was watching the gates? And they're not sending their best, or maybe they weren't back then. But either way, kind of ironic. They were kicked out for being radicals. So what do? They come to another country, and then they raise a radical who tries to blow people up at a public demonstration. Now, today, there was also, or maybe this might have been yesterday, sometime within the last 24 hours, FBI went to a Pennsylvania storage facility that was connected to one or both of these individuals that took part in this attempted Muslim terrorist attack over the weekend. Let's go ahead and take a look at the footage. Now, also, when they were brought out by police, at least one of them held up the one finger, which is apparently what ISIS does.
Ibrahim Kayumi and Emir Balot brought 2 homemade explosives to an anti-Muslim protest on Saturday. Thankfully, neither detonated, but as you mentioned, more homemade bombs have been found and safely removed from a Pennsylvania storage unit connected to the case. Both suspects are being held without bail after their first appearances in court yesterday on charges that include attempting to provide material support to a foreign terrorist organization.
Oh, look, he's trying to cover it up.
A weapon of mass destruction. According to a criminal complaint, both men expressed support for ISIS, and one talked about watching ISIS videos.
Younger and younger individuals who are radicalizing and mobilizing to violence. And this is taking place against the backdrop of social media, the dynamics of online culture. It's not limited to ISIS, it's across the ideological spectrum.
Fox News Digital captured these.
Damn! All right, so I know the house on the right is a 5,000 plus square foot, multi-million-dollar home. The other house appears to be just as palatial. So both of these kids were spoiled, brat, homegrown Muslim terrorists. Look at this. Look at this. Living the American dream. Literally handed everything they could ever want, and the only thing they did was pick up the worst aspects of the countries their parents left behind. Still don't have any word on their parents or, whether or not they're tied to these attacks in any way. We don't know who was arrested yesterday. But damn, look at this. Look at this. Growing up little rich bitches in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and they still turn out to be terrorists.
Photos of the suspects' homes, both located in Philadelphia suburbs, roughly 15 minutes apart. The suspects are U.S. citizens, but their parents are naturalized U.S. citizens from the Middle East. An attorney for one of the suspects tried to suggest yesterday that the two co-defendants were strangers to each other. Both men are due back in court early next month. Martha.
Yeah, she's got that right, Jan. Sure, Jan.
Sure, Jan.
All right. So these guys may. I find it highly unlikely that they're strangers to each other. Obviously, they have both of their telephones, so they're going to have any communications that they may have had. I mean, I know that I'm not in the habit of showing up at protests where I don't know people and saying, "Hey, bro, want to hold on to this bomb for me? Want to throw your life away real quick?" Yeah, it doesn't work like that. So these guys definitely knew each other. All right. Now, there was some, remember I told you yesterday that the FBI, or excuse me, the NSA was tracking Iranian sleeper cell activations. I saw something else related to that today, but nothing else. I mean, nothing really to report on other than kind of just like a reinforcement of that. So I'm watching to see if we're going to have any other events taking place around the country. I kind of just wanted to tell you guys to have your wits about you if you're going to be going out, especially if you live in a major metropolitan area like this. Jim Kyle, when did Jake Lane become a member of the white supremacists according to the mayor of New York? Yeah, I mean, he hasn't. He just doesn't like Muslims, which, I mean, I really can't blame him, unfortunately for them. Of course, the Jake Lang as a white supremacist is the common parlance for left-wing radicals. They're going to call everybody a white supremacist. All right. Now, yesterday, I don't remember if it was here or if it was on, no, it was maybe it was on Baseless Conspiracies, but we had a small conversation about the price of gas. And I really love Tim Burchett. Every single day he posts something that I think it's great. So the price of gas was rising. It was over $100 a barrel, and that was because of insecurity in the market. Now, you got to imagine, we've got plenty of gas. The gas stations are full. It's not like everybody is going day to day or week to week, and they're just suddenly going to run out of gas, and the gas is going to stop flowing because of what's happening in Iran. But the gas companies act like it is. And as soon as something happens, then their assholes pucker and they start charging more. And Tim Burchett makes an excellent point here. There's a lot of products out there that are based on the harvest and the processing of oil and gas. Say like motor oil or plastics. All right. Every time there is some insecurity in the oil market, the price of all of those things doesn't go up because the supply of them is elastic, right? I mean, like there's plenty of everything to go around. The same is true of gas. It only happens with gas. And so, Tim, let's go ahead and take a listen. He owns a diesel, by the way. My buddy Wes owns a diesel. He was texting me the other night, totally like just twisted in knots because he's paying just about $5 a gallon for diesel up in Michigan. And he's like, I don't know if you can talk to anybody in the administration, but please ask them to do something about gas. I was like, Wes, I wish I had a connection like that. But unfortunately, I cannot influence policy. And besides, the reason that diesel is so expensive is because the legislature, Congress, through programs that were implemented under Barack Hussein Obama and going even further back to Jimmy Carter, they've been trying through the guise of, environmentalism, Green New Deal, that stuff, to sort of price Americans out of the diesel market. They basically don't want you driving a diesel, even though it's a better engine, it's a better car, it's going to get better gas mileage. And so there's all these taxes on diesel, and there's all of these processes that have to happen to make diesel somewhat cleaner. I mean, and that's, by definition of the legislature. But take a listen.
Filled up the dually with diesel yesterday. I decided to do that instead of sending my daughter to school next year. But the reality is, I mean, they're ripping us off. Diesel is like the second cut they take off it when it comes out of the ground. I think it goes kerosene and diesel and then gasoline, and diesel is the most expensive. And I'm sure they can make some sort of, they'll bring out the economic experts, another to cover themselves on that. Another thing that really ticks me off about it is that they've when the price of oil, like they say, well, it's this whatever happens overseas is causing this to happen. But then when you go to the hardware store or the auto parts store and you buy a quart of oil, guess what? The price hasn't gone up. But the price of the gasoline in the tank is going up, and that's gasoline that is probably months from it was in the ground, and then it was converted into gasoline at a refinery. So the whole thing is just ridiculous. It's greed, and eventually we're going to come to a point in technology, say coal turning coal into oil and gasoline, as the Germans did during the Second World War. But guess what? The technology hasn't advanced since then. It's still cheaper just to get oil out of the ground than to convert coal, which we have a lot of. And how much oil does America get from Iran? Zero. That's how much. This is a scam, and these oil companies, shame on them. They're using this opportunity to make record profits once again. So you got to ask yourself, even if we were getting it, what about the stuff that's already in the pipeline, that's already been paid for, or the gasoline that's in the tank at your neighborhood filling station? How does it go up exponentially when something happens overseas? It's a scam. Gasoline goes up like a rocket, and it comes down with a parachute and never gets back down to where it should be. Technology, all that technology in the world, we're going to eventually figure out how to crack that hydrogen molecule and run our cars off of water, I think. I don't care what the scientists tell you right now. They tell you all this stuff. The man couldn't run a 4-minute mile, can't go 100 miles an hour in an automobile, you can't breathe. We're not going to go to the moon. Tim Burchett's not going to get elected to Congress. You hear all those things. Guess what? They happened. Anyway, thank y'all for sending me here. Pray for our country.
Yeah, diesel is the cheapest. Up until Gulf War II, diesel was always cheaper than regular gas. And then that was the first time I noticed that they made it go up. And yes, then they did the low sulfur stuff to it. Low sulfur diesel that raised the price. I drive a truck for a living, pay for my own fuel. It's hurting my business. Yes, absolutely. My feel for you, my friend. Now, of course, it would be possible to make diesel very, very inexpensive, but they have no desire to do that. They're making far too much money. Now, before we talk about what's happening in Iran, I want to play this video for you. I've actually played it on the show before, but President Trump shared a post from Wall Street Apes, which is a clip of a video with Jeffrey Sachs, where Jeffrey Sachs is talking about Barack Hussein Obama, the CIA, and Syria. And he also brings up Bibi Netanyahu.
The war in Syria, and you may actually hear from grown-up reporters who are lying through their teeth or ignorant beyond imagining that, oh, the war in Syria, yes, Russia intervened in Syria. Well, do you know that that Obama tasked the CIA to overthrow the Syrian government starting 4 years before Russia intervened? What kind of nonsense is that? And how many times did the New York Times report on Operation Timber Sycamore, which was the presidential order to the CIA to overthrow Bashar al-Assad? 3 times in 10 years. This is not democracy. This is a game. And it's a game of narrative. Why did the U.S. invade Iraq in 2003? Well, first of all, it was completely phony pretenses. It wasn't, oh, we were so wrong, they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. They actually did focus groups in the fall of 2002 to find out what would sell that war to the American people. Abe Schultzke, if you want to know the name of the PR genius. They did focus groups on the war. They wanted the war all the time. They had to figure out how to sell the war to the American people, how to scare the shit out of the American people. It was a phony war. Where did that war come from? You know what? It's quite surprising. That war came from Netanyahu, actually. You know that? It's weird. And the way it is that Netanyahu had from 1995 onward the theory that the only way we're going to get rid of Hamas and Hezbollah is by toppling the governments that support them. That's Iraq, Syria, and Iran. And the guy's nothing if not obsessive. And he's still trying to get us to fight Iran this day, this week. He's a deep, dark son of a bitch, sorry to tell you, because he's gotten us into endless wars, and because of the power of all of this in the U.S. politics, he's gotten his way. But that war was totally phony. So what is this democracy versus dictatorship? Come on. These are not even sensible terms.
All right, so obviously Jeffrey Sachs opens by talking about Obama, talking about Timber Sycamore, deposing Bashar al-Assad. Then he goes into Gulf War 1 and 2 and the fake weapons of mass destruction lie. And then he closes it out talking about the toppling of Iran. Highly topical at this moment because it ties directly in with the conversation we just had about gasoline and, of course, the ongoing stuff that is taking place in Iran right now. Now, this post was put out there to coincide shortly with this story about Israel destroying Iran's oil infrastructure. Now, as a result of this move by Israel, Iran is no longer able to produce their own oil, which is going to make it possible, it's going to make it necessary for them to import oil so that they can take care of their own energy needs. That's devastating, especially at a time when this war is taking place. And, of course, there is a lot of insecurity surrounding all of this. Ultimately, it's good for the oil industry because it removes a source of energy from one place on the map, and it opens up markets for all of these other producers to step right in and to take advantage of the hole in the market. So Iran has on hand right now fewer than 90 days of petroleum reserves. So now that they don't have the production or distribution facilities that they had at the start of this attack, and they have no real prospect of getting resupplied by any nation, because, of course, the United States and partner nations are going to be controlling the Straits of Hormuz, this is going to put a major constraint on their ability to operate. With the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, it's put a lot of pressure on the region. A lot of the world's oil goes through that area. There was a rumor, I didn't see it substantiated anywhere, but CNN had reported that Iran was placing landmine or ocean mines in the water out there. And President Trump actually responded and said, if Iran has put any mines in the Strait of Hormuz, you better get them out of there right now, because then otherwise, what you've seen take place so far is going to be 20 times worse, and we're not going to take any mercy on you. So what's important about this nighttime raid that took place with Israel destroying Iran's oil production and refining capability is that the United States had nothing to do with it. And obviously, the toppling of Iran, although there are benefits to the United States of America and the region as a whole, has long been a goal of the nation of Israel, more than anyone else. And we've had Syria fall, we've had Iraq fall, and now we are watching Iran fall. U.S. CENTCOM has also released footage of some of the strikes that we have taken parts in. And apparently, in the last 24 hours, it has been incredibly intense. Now, earlier, oil was over $100 a barrel. President Trump, referring to these attacks by the United States, essentially said the war is basically over. Okay, everybody should just, get used to the idea we are far ahead of our timeline, and we've done way better than we even thought we would. Basically, as soon as he said that, oil dropped to like $80 a barrel. It was a huge swing. And then within an hour, it was back up to like 85 or 90 or something like that. I don't know where it's at right now. It's been all over the place all day. So it's either good based upon what President Trump says, or it's bad based upon what the oil companies say. But either way, we've been successful, and we still have to worry about what Israel is doing, because Pete Hegseth held a press conference earlier today to confirm that what Israel did at those Iranian oil facilities is completely outside the objectives of the United States. Of course, when Iran does reopen as a nation with a different government, they are going to need to take care of certain specific items, including the continued production of their own oil. And that's obviously going to be necessary if they're going to be economically stable. With this particular thing removed from the board, it's going to place a new wrinkle in that economic productivity going forward. So I wanted to actually show you some of the videos of this, and then we'll hear from
Robert,
Pete Hegseth.
What do you make of all this?
Well, when major global
What the heck? This is not what I want.
trade route is threatened or
Okay, huge explosion. Now, an oil refining facility like this, it's not going to be easy to just make it start working again. That is some critical infrastructure right there.
Guys, are you really still using this
Just got to get
pill
past
from the
this
90s?
commercial.
You know there's something way better.
It's also a bit of an ecological disaster, right? All right, so, and this is Tehran today, just covered in thick black smoke. You don't really want to be breathing that stuff in. Apparently, the rain that came down on Tehran today had a lot of oil in it. So basically, the whole city is an oil slick right now. So here is Pete Hegseth earlier today speaking about what happened. And the fact that he's saying that this was outside of our objectives, President Trump is saying Israel wants us to be in a forever war, but President Trump is saying he wants the war to end. We're like kind of caught in this ping pong game. Oh, thank God there's no sound.
Thank you, Jordan Conrad's from the Gateway Pundit. Axios reported, citing U.S. and Israeli sources, that the U.S. was not happy with strikes on 30 fuel depots in Iran. While this is anonymous sourcing, it seems kind of congruent with what President Trump said yesterday, that there's certain spots they don't want to hit relating to energy infrastructure that would take a long time to rebuild. And whether this reporting is true or not, what's your message to Americans, those who supported the president and those who aren't really in favor of this war and who worry that Israel might be taking advantage of the U.S.'s backing? And then for Mr. Chairman, for you, I wanted to ask, when you say that we're moving inland, what capabilities does Iran have to shoot down jets over their land? And would that trigger some kind of rescue operation that could risk a bigger ground operation?
Well, I would just state by saying Israel's been a really strong partner in this effort. Where they have different objectives, they've pursued them. Ultimately, we've stayed focused on ours. But what Iran has felt is the power of the world's two most powerful air forces. In that particular case, those weren't our strikes or that objective, or that wasn't necessarily our objective. But the president has made it clear to those concerns that we're not getting pulled in any direction. We're leading. The president is leading. He's determining where we want to go, what the outcome will be, what the end state is, with a very keen eye. And I understand those concerns because I've heard from a lot of people who I went through 20 years of those wars myself, worried about getting dragged in, worried about mission creep, worried about nation building or democracy expansion. That's never the perspective the president has pursued on this. Just because.
Okay, so that's basically what I wanted you to hear. Ultimately, I think the message is President Trump is stating, without actually saying it, he's well aware of what the Israeli government's goals are. He's also well aware of the Israeli government's propensity to take advantage of a situation and perhaps their belief that the United States is just going to do whatever they want us to do, rather. But both he and Pete Hegseth are delivering a pretty consistent message. that this is not going to be a forever war. We are not going to get bogged down. This is not what's going to happen, like what has happened before. We're not looking at another 20 years in Iran. We're not going to be taking over this nation. And ultimately, it's about a set of clear, concise objectives. And when those objectives are met, we're fine. We're done. Okay. And as of today, of course, still, we do not have troops on the ground. I think that that's going to be a huge, huge tell right there. If for any reason we put 50,000 troops on the ground in Iran, that things are going to be changing in a real significant way. And I just don't see that happening. So I just wanted to calm the nerves of anyone out there who may be getting nervous about it. Trisha over on Rumble says, price gouging is illegal during natural disasters and companies get investigated for it. Congress needs to be threatening oil companies with major penalties for increases when we're not even affected. Trisha, the problem is that those oil companies pay lots of money to those congressmen. And that's why you don't see anything happening to them. And that's why you don't see anybody except for Tim Burchett bringing it up. All right. Now, I think it was a day or two ago I had mentioned that Russia, Vladimir Putin, had said, perhaps it's time we stop selling oil to the European Union. Because, of course, the European Union is one of the major driving forces behind the continuance of the Ukraine-Russia war. President Trump and Vladimir Putin had a phone call to discuss the wars that we and they are involved in. Putin has now come out and said, you know what? Maybe I'm okay with making a deal with the European Union. So I think he's taking a page out of the playbook of the art of the deal. But President Trump and Putin spoke on the phone. This is the first call they've had since the beginning of this action in Iran. Obviously, Russia, Iran, they've traditionally been fairly closely aligned. We are seeing a convergence of the relationships between Russia and the United States, at least publicly. I think just about everybody here believes, as I do, that there is no rift between Russia and the United States. Behind the scenes, there are always communications that are taking place. President Trump is always trying to find a way to come to a peaceful resolution of the situation with Ukraine. Of course, it is the European Union and Zelensky who seem perennially unable to make a deal. Trump has, of course, also hinted at the possibility of Russians helping the Iranians, but he said they don't want to do that. Likely they don't want to do that because President Trump has spoken to Putin about what that could mean. He's also downplayed the scenario when others have asked him about it. Envoy for the White House, Steve Witkoff, told reporters on Saturdays he had communicated to Russian officials that they should not share any intelligence with Iran. And here is President Trump speaking about that phone call that he and Vladimir Putin had earlier.
I had a very good call with President Putin. We had a lot of people on the line from our side, from his side. We were talking about Ukraine, which is just a never-ending fight. And look, there's tremendous hatred between President Putin and President Zelensky. They can't seem to get it together. But I think it was a positive call on that subject. And we obviously talked then about the Middle East. And he wants to be helpful. I said, you could be more helpful by getting the Ukraine-Russia war over with. That would be more helpful. But we had a very good talk, and he wants to be very constructive. Yeah, I had a very good call.
So good signs there. The Kremlin said that Trump and Putin had this call in their first telephone call this year. They discussed Russian ideas for a speedy end to the conflict in Iran, the military situation in Ukraine, and the impact of events in Venezuela on the global oil market. It's been positive. Putin had said earlier that the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran had triggered a global energy crisis, while cautioning that oil production is dependent on transport through the Strait of Hormuz near Iran's coast, and it could soon come to a halt. President Trump looks like he was asked again about this call.
Do you approve of Iran's new supreme leader? And secondly, can you tell us more about your call with Russian President Vladimir Putin today?
Yes.
What did you discuss?
Yes, I had a very good call with President Putin. We had a lot of people on the line from our side, from his side.
This is the same question. Sorry about that. Okay. Moving on from Iran, etc., the Justice Department, of course, is where Ed Martin works. He is the pardon attorney. He was originally up for the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, and he's now facing ethics charges for the D.C. bar. I guess he sent a letter to Georgetown University's Law Center regarding their DEI policies. This was last year while he was the interim U.S. Attorney for D.C. So the D.C. bar is now targeting Ed Martin because he was pushing to end diversity, equity, and inclusion policies at Georgetown. President Trump and the administration has been pretty clear on this. The D.C. bar's attempt to target and punish those serving President Trump while refusing to investigate or act against actual ethical violations that were committed by Biden and Obama administration attorneys is a clear indication of the partisan organization's agenda. This is a statement from the DOJ. So the office that polices attorney misconduct in Washington, D.C., is who filed this ethics charge against Justice Department pardon attorney Ed Martin after Ed sent that letter to the Georgetown University Law Center raising questions about the policies they had regarding diversity and inclusion. Again, while he was serving as the interim U.S. attorney. It was a February 17th letter from last year, and Martin told university officials that a whistleblower claimed Georgetown was teaching DEI and just simply asked them about the practice. I believe I read that letter at the time. Without waiting for a response, he told the school he was imposing sanctions by instructing his office staff not to employ any students from the school as fellows, interns, or employees at the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C. In response, the school's now former dean, William Treanor, told Martin, who is a devout Catholic, that his letter represented an attack on the university's mission as a Jesuit and Catholic institution. So filings were made in the D.C. Court of Appeals Board of Professional Responsibility, dated for last Friday, and made public earlier today. Disciplinary counsel Hamilton Phil Fox III of the D.C. bar is alleging that Martin's conduct as a government official violated the First and Fifth Amendments of the U.S. Constitution by making demands that the law school change what it teaches students and how it teaches them. Well, I believe that actually came in the form of an executive order from the president. But of course, these people have nearly unlimited amounts of money and power, and if they can just get somebody's law license taken away, then obviously they'd like to do that. So I went and checked in on Ed Martin, wanted to see what he was posting, and he shares this little gem. True, the spying operations, codenamed Crossfire Hurricane, we know about that one. Round River, that's a new one. Plasmic Echo, that's also a new one. And Arctic Frost, we do know about that one as well, spied on Donald Trump and his closest aides. Now, again, Ed Martin working within the Justice Department. This man knows his stuff. The reason he posted this is because Just the News has just broken the news that President Trump was targeted in a number of additional and, until just recently, unknown FBI counter-intel investigations that were used to surveil President Trump, the people around him, and actually ensnared the communications of hundreds of Americans. This, my friends, is what I was talking about in the opening of the show. I do want to give some props to Kash Patel for bringing this information to the forefront, but at this point, it seems like the amount of illegal investigations that the FBI was involved in is probably never ending. They obviously had a classification system, very sophisticated, through which they could hide this information, because I'm assuming they believed that nobody like Kash Patel would ever be appointed to head the FBI, nobody like President Trump would ever come back to lead the country. But allegedly, as a result of discovering these operations, Director Patel is right now building a criminal case in at least one, and he's planning the full declassification of the two others so that Congress can be informed of these abuses by the previous administrations. I would like it to go a little bit farther than that. I'd like it to be that these sorts of things never happen again in the future. But much like the D.C. bar organization has power over anybody practicing law in D.C., it seems like the FBI has nearly unlimited power to pursue the enemies of the people who are paying their salaries. So President Trump and his supporters were targeted by 4 consecutive FBI codenamed counterintelligence investigations over the last decade that secretly subjected hundreds of innocent Americans to privacy-inducing tactics and essentially treated the man, twice elected president, as a national security threat for most of the first 9 years of his political career. FBI Director Kash Patel has personally led the effort to review the operations codenamed Crossfire Hurricane, Round River, Plasmic Echo, and Arctic Frost that stretched from summer 2016 all the way until January 2025, when he came just before he came back into office. Now, uncovering evidence during that search of a far-reaching dragnet that in some cases may have been predicated on false, misleading, or uncorroborated justifications. Sounds like par for the course. I'm so used to hearing that the FBI used illegal tactics so that they could use the power of their bureau to go after the people they deem to be their enemies. Many of the investigative files were, of course, hidden from view, even from most FBI agents, because they were marked prohibited access, and they were controlled carefully by FBI leadership. This would have been Christopher Wray. This would have been James Comey. Now, Kash Patel's search has been aided by whistleblowers inside his agency. There are a handful of senior bureau executives that are close to the director, as well as some members of Congress, particularly the Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley of Iowa. Those who have seen the records did speak to Just the News, and they chronicle how the FBI's expanded counterterrorism and counterintelligence missions after September 11th eventually became hijacked by politics and led agents to deploy tools meant for terrorists and spies against everyday Americans in a bid to find a way to bring criminal cases against President Trump. One of these whistleblowers this month told the FBI that surveillance and monitoring of Trump figures continued right up until the president's January 2025 inauguration, according to multiple interviews. There were very few people inside President Trump's orbit that were spared from being targeted by their stature. There were a dozen members of Congress and their staffers, his future chief of staff, Susie Wiles, journalists, campaign advisors, defense lawyers, even Kash Patel himself had their privacy pierced by warrants, wiretaps, FISA surveillance, phone record analysis, FBI assessments, or grand juries. Now, many of those targets and suspects fell under the Bureau's definition of special circumstance targets because they have recognized constitutionally protected privileges. We're talking people like lawyers or members of Congress, journalists, and other political figures. Even a political consultant turned documentary filmmaker who investigated Hunter Biden's foreign business dealings before joining the Trump campaign in 2024 was also recently notified that he was targeted in a criminal investigation that just very recently was shut down. Michael Caputo had his emails and communications seized in 2023 by a classified subpoena that was issued about 2 weeks after he joined the Trump campaign, and the email account the Bureau penetrated contained correspondence on the Trump campaign's private strategies and deliberations. Kash Patel's FBI has informed Congress that, although the probe has been shut down, the question of how so many Americans were targeted remains open. There were at least 1,200 people that fell into categories of special circumstance targets or were subjected and investigated under assessments by the FBI from 2018 through 2024, all the way during Christopher Wray's tenure, and this recent audit of this behavior was just given to Congress in the form of a report. We can actually read the whole thing. Now, a senior official with direct knowledge of the FBI's current reviews spoke to Just the News and said there is growing evidence that may support a case that the FBI engaged between 2016 and 2025 in a conspiracy to violate the civil rights of Trump and his supporters under the color of government power. That is a very serious charge, and I think everyone listening here knows that it's true. It's just a matter of finding the balls to actually charge the people who violated those civil rights and who engaged in this behavior. This could realistically happen if there was the will to do so, but unfortunately, I think a lot of people are disillusioned with the progress on a lot of things related to public corruption. More than anything, I would love to see people being tried, people going to prison. I want there to be far-reaching and long-lasting consequences when things like this happen, because otherwise there's no reason for it not to happen again in the future. You know, I'm constantly reminded of all of the rich and powerful people in the Epstein files, who the FBI and the SDNY simply decided it wasn't worth it to go after them. Why? Because they were too rich. They would be able to fight, but they have no problem going after people like us. They have no problem going after people connected to President Trump. I mean, even if they can't beat those people, they can at least kill their political careers, and then it's still a win, right? So Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon also spoke on this story. That's important because as the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, it would be her purview to prosecute those people responsible. She says that criminal charges are indeed possible if federal officials intentionally violated civil liberties in politically weaponized investigations. And that's the rub. The intentionality of it. We have to prove, or the DOJ has to prove, that they did it on purpose. And it's a tall order, it seems, because the burden of proof apparently is much higher when you are a member of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Or perhaps it's just that your ability to hide your true intentions becomes that much easier because you're a member of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or name a federal agency and insert there. She said the Department of Justice is at the heart of considering these issues right now. Do it, Harmeet. So I can't really talk about the specifics, but in general terms, yes, the Civil Rights Division in the DOJ generally does have the tool of a criminal conspiracy statute for conspiracy against rights, and this dates back to the start of the Ku Klux Klan. This is the exact same charge that they went after the church raiders for in Minneapolis. I would say all of those things are on the table for lawyers and DOJ officials and others who conspired with them at the state level. State prosecutors, state police, and so forth, who conspired to violate civil rights, and it could also include executive branch officials from the first administration who knowingly conspired and orchestrated a violation of federal civil rights. Now, one thing that I have heard people say, well, they can't go after all of them because then everything collapses. Good. I don't want a corrupt system that is held up just because bad people are there holding it up. I want a system that we can trust. People are going to call me naive. You're never going to be able to trust the system. Shit. I'm aware. I'm aware. However, a boy can dream, can't he? Okay. I would love it if the guilty paid. But the system is so big that it protects itself. And we see it time and time again. And I know it's frustrating. But we are so early in this administration. Please, Harmeet Dillon. Harmeet Dillon, hear our prayer. Patron saint of civil rights. We want you to do this. We really would love to see people going to prison. I did not have to start over, Dirk Gently. You are definitely late. All right, so just the news has also confirmed federal prosecutors in Miami, led by U.S. Attorney Jason Redding Quinones, also known as Captain America, are investigating the weaponization of intelligence and law enforcement against Trump and his allies as they build a potential grand conspiracy case spanning 2016, 2020, and 2024. Now, this is the part that gives me hope about this whole thing, because as I think we've established, bringing a case against any D.C. Beltway insider within the District of Columbia is damn near impossible. All right, those people all know each other. They all hate Trump, and they all hate the people who love Trump. So they're going to protect each other. But if this is a conspiracy case, they've already got the conspiracy grand jury down in Florida. It is far more likely that a successful prosecution could be brought in Florida than in Washington, D.C. So I'm not giving up. I'm not willing to say that it's not possible, but I am happy to say that I would love an expedited timeline. I know it's early days, but 25% of 100% is still 25%. Now, evidence in the first and last of the counterintelligence operations is pretty well known, mostly released already to the public. Crossfire Hurricane, well established. They probed now disproven Russia collusion allegations. Arctic Frost, that's where they looked at President Trump's effort to offer the Senate alternate electors ahead of the 2020 election certification on January 6th, 2021. Everybody knows that's not a crime. Alternate electors are not a novel legal theory. It's something that's happened on a number of occasions. John F. Kennedy, Democrat candidate for president of the United States, offered up alternate electors in Hawaii. He went on to win the election. But the new ones, documents declassified last year, among other things, also show that the Obama administration and their fake intelligence officials misled Congress and others when claiming that the discredited anti-Trump Steele dossier was not used in the 2017 U.S. intelligence community assessment on Russian meddling. It definitely was. And of course, we do know a lot about Arctic Frost as well. That probe alone targeted nearly 400 conservative groups and individuals that were simply associated with President Trump, some that didn't even exist on January 6th. And officials say the two middle operations, which we are only just beginning to learn about because they are in the early stages of declassification because they need Congress to read it first. Of course, they get dibs on everything, might produce some of the most troubling abuses uncovered by Kash Patel and the guys and gals on his team, and are the focus of ongoing criminal investigations into former FBI and DOJ personnel. Please arrest them. Please. I'm just going to keep asking nicely. I want to see these people be arrested because we've witnessed corrupt agents, corrupt bureaucrats for years, my entire life. I've been waiting for a moment such as this, waiting to see these people get taken down, always believing perhaps it was not going to be possible. And this is the time. If it was going to happen, it would be happening very, very soon. Now, Plasmic Echo, as an investigation, this one explored whether or not President Trump illegally took classified documents into his Mar-a-Lago home after his first term. They've already turned up evidence that FBI agents believed he did not meet the legal standards for a search warrant. We've actually shown emails here on the show before where they discuss this very thing. Like, hey, there's no there. Of course, President Trump was the president of the freaking United States. He had executive privilege. He had the power to declassify whatever he wanted to. So nothing was classified that he took out of there. There were agents, however, who ended up raiding the president's home in August of 2022 after being overruled by the DOJ, according to this new bombshell revelation by Kash Patel. We continue to pass versions back and forth after our pause and concern about probable cause for any of the locations outlined, this agent wrote. What is the guidance for continuing to work on this document without any new information? We also know about Joe Biden. He directly linked lawfare back to President Trump. The Biden White House was directly involved to the classified documents investigation into President Trump. They denied it time and time again, but Attorney General Merrick Garland said he personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant for the FBI's unprecedented raid on Mar-a-Lago. Now, Patel and a small team of Inner Circle agents have also found proof that the Bureau, under former Director Christopher Wray, obtained Kash Patel's own phone records. They obtained Susie Wiles' phone records. This was after President Trump announced he was running in the 2024 election, and then they proceeded to record a phone call between the future White House chief of staff on the pretense that her defense lawyer consented. But her lawyer, as I've told you, has issued a statement adamantly denying he ever consented to any such monitoring, which raises the possibility there were false representations made to a court so they could get phone monitoring on Susie Wiles and then leading up to the Mar-a-Lago raid. If I ever pulled a stunt like that, I wouldn't and shouldn't have a license to practice law. This is an unidentified DOJ lawyer. He said, I'm as shocked as Susie. Sources told Just the News that the FBI has an intensive criminal probe ongoing, and the first decisions on whether indictments are warranted could be made in a few weeks. They're warranted. They're 100% warranted. Make it happen. Meanwhile, the Round River investigation might prove to be the most troubling of all of these counterintelligence probes targeting President Trump and the people who orbit him. Although at present, we don't have much information about it. It remains mostly classified. Agents only recently discovered the opening memo and files for the probe, which was started in the Bureau's Pittsburgh field office by targeting Trump lawyer and former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani for his efforts to investigate Hunter Biden and Joe Biden's exploits in Ukraine. But then it expanded to look at numerous public figures who spoke out about the corruption inside the Biden crime family. Early whistleblower evidence from that case has raised grave concerns inside Congress about potential civil liberty violations, specifically that people in that investigation may have been targeted solely by virtue of their speech. Lawmakers fear that the standards for who was targeted were simply talking points deemed by FBI counterintelligence to be so-called Russian disinformation. That was their favorite tagline. In other words, reporters, lawmakers, movie makers, lawyers who made up certain allegations or raised concerns about the Biden's dealings in Ukraine may have been assessed to be national security threats aligned with Russia, meaning they would be worthy of investigation. They would be treated as purveyors of disinformation, interfering in elections. Senator Grassley's staff has played a pretty critical role in helping the FBI search for records, passing along information from agency whistleblowers who sought protection from Congress during the Biden years, long before Kash Patel took over. One of Grassley's letters in 2022 actually appears to refer to that Round River operation without naming it and raise serious concerns about the constitutionality of that investigation. But the information provided to my office involves concerns about the FBI's receipt and use of derogatory information relating to Hunter Biden, Chuck Grassley wrote, and the FBI's false portrayal of acquired evidence as disinformation. The volume and consistency of these allegations substantiate their credibility and necessitate this letter. He also added, based on allegations, verified and verifiable derogatory information on Hunter Biden was falsely labeled as disinformation. We've got information in the files that show that the Bureau may have targeted the Pittsburgh office as the launching point to impede an effort by then Attorney General Bill Barr to ask his federal prosecution team in the same city to investigate why an FBI informant report alleging Biden family corruption was never fully investigated when it first came in. Grassley and Ron Johnson previously told Kash Patel that in August of 2020, we were provided an unnecessary briefing by the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force that was designed to undermine our investigation into the Biden family. Most of these files on Round River, Plasmic Echo, and Arctic Frost were all buried from Patel's view when he arrived in what we now know were prohibited access files. This is the tactic that these deep state agents were using during the Christopher Wray era of the FBI to shield from view anything that would be considered politically sensitive cases inside the Bureau's case management system known as Sentinel. Everything is digital, right? I mean, like, it's all going to be tucked away in different folders. So unless you know where to go, unless you know how to search for it, and unless you have the access to even get to the location on the hard drive where it is, you're never going to be able to find it. That left only certain officials even aware of the existence of these files. Often they were hidden files in secure storage areas known as sensitive, compartmented information facilities. That is, of course, a SCIF. So Patel has assigned a small team of agents to hunt for the files, uncover abuses, and he's also being assisted greatly by a handful of senior executives who can navigate and find well-hidden evidence in the Bureau storage system. That sounds like he's got a team of autists scraping through all of these files, doing nothing else. Another complicating factor is that the Bureau just lost the man who produced much of the most explosive evidence to Congress over the last 14 months. That would be Congressional Affairs Office Chief Marshall Yates. He was widely popular on Capitol Hill for achieving a level of transparency after years of stonewalled congressional requests. He announced that he was stepping down. Deputy Attorney General Andrew Bailey has instead been taking the lead in organizing and approaching going forward, but he ruffled feathers internally and in Congress with comments that some took to suggest he was going to slow the amount of damaging information being sent to Congress to thwart demands to fire agents who were involved in abusive investigations. Why? Why would he do that? Bailey allayed those concerns with a memo Friday stating that production of evidence to Congress in a DOJ investigation was imperative, according to officials who received and saw the memo. G. Fontes says, Zach, did you know that in the great state of Florida, a non-capital offense only seats a 6-person jury in a state trial held up by SCOTUS? Does not apply to federal courts, though. I was not aware of that. No. So you're a non-capital offense. You're saying like any offense that doesn't result in capital murder? Is that what you mean? So like if I go on trial for something down here, it's just going to be a 6-person jury? Well, God forbid I ever end up on trial down here in Florida. I certainly don't want that to happen. All right, let me say thank you to Sean Joe for the cookie. Thank you for the can, and thank you for 2 more cookies. Thank you to Filter Dog for a can. Have the mine experts showed up yet? Not to my knowledge. Thank you also to Filter Dog for dropping another cookie. Appreciate you there, bud. Okay. All right. Now, we have a brief message I need to bring you guys from our friends over on Rumble, and let me just get that pulled up here. And we will continue to dive right in. All right. My friends, they can cancel your accounts, they can freeze your cards, and they can decide what you're allowed to say, who you're allowed to support, or what you're allowed to buy. Because big banks and financial institutions have total control over your money. They know it and they use it. And that's why financial independence matters right now more than ever. So introducing the Rumble Wallet. It's a wallet that's built for real freedom because with Rumble Wallet, you control your own money, not a bank, not a government, not a tech company. You can buy digital assets like Tether, Tether Gold, and Bitcoin all in one secure place. There's no permission, no middlemen, no cancel button. So when you want to support the creators you actually believe in, you can then use the Rumble Wallet app to directly tip them securely, instantly, and without any interference. It's not a credit line they can shut off. It's your wallet. It's permanent, yours to protect for the future, to protect for your family. And when the system fails, when institutions turn on their own people, financial sovereignty is the difference between security and vulnerability. Rumble Wallet isn't about politics. It's about freedom, ownership, and protecting what's yours. So take control today. Download the Rumble Wallet now and step away from the big banks for good. You'll get true ownership, true protection, and true financial freedom. Thank you very much to the good folks at Rumble. Thank you. And continuing, in addition to the new revelations about all of these investigations into President Trump and the people around him, we've also learned that Jack Smith also subpoenaed the phone records of the former Kansas Attorney General. The Tennessee Star is reporting that former Kansas Attorney General Phil Kline was among the 430 individuals or organizations who were subpoenaed by former special prosecutor Jack Smith as part of that Arctic frost probe in the 2020 election where they were going after President Trump and everybody around him. So this correspondence that was received by the Tennessee Star came from Verizon last week. It notified the Kline family on February 25th that its records had, in fact, been subpoenaed by the U.S. Senate, and the records request related to an earlier subpoena obtained by Smith and given to Jack Smith from Verizon on August 1st, 2023. They, of course, have to notify you that they've handed this information over, but they don't tell you about it until it is far later. Now, according to the letter from the special prosecutor's office, the subpoena sought subscriber information, names, addresses, records for inbound and outbound calls, text messages, voicemails, as well as the means and source of payment to Verizon, which the document specified included the credit card or bank account that Kline was using to pay his phone bill. It also sought any other phone numbers that might be associated with Kline's account, as well as the IP addresses he used to access the internet while using those Verizon-connected devices. Like the Arctic frost subpoenas that sought phone records from various Republicans in Congress, including at least 8 U.S. senators, the order was also signed by Judge James Boasberg. Now, as with the other subpoenas, Boasberg prohibited Verizon from informing Klein about the order. He cited reasonable grounds to believe that such disclosure will result in destruction of or tampering with evidence, intimidation of potential witnesses, and serious jeopardy to the investigation. So, Smith's team sought Klein's records from October 1st of 2020 through January 31st of 2021. It's a bit narrower window than the orders for the other people that were subpoenaed from Arctic Frost. And in other instances, investigators reportedly sought more than 2 years of phone records, such as those for Representative Jim Jordan. The letter that was sent from Smith's office to Verizon was signed by a former U.S. Department of Justice attorney who left his position with the government in January 2025, as soon as President Trump came back into office. Verizon was instructed to send the subpoena records to another former FBI agent who was actually fired by Kash Patel. So Phil Klein is now a law professor at Liberty University, and he used to lead the Amistad Project of the Thomas More Society during the period where Republicans were actively contesting 2020 election results. Klein was not a practicing attorney at the time, but the Amistad Group planned lawsuit challenges regarding the presidential election in 6 states. Prior to the certification of the election results on January 6th, Klein was actually the first to accuse Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg of using the Center for Technology and Civic Life, also known as CTCL, to fund a shadow campaign that illegally inflated turnout in key Democratic swing states. Marsha Blackburn, U.S. Senator for Tennessee, whose records were also subpoenaed as part of Arctic Frost, said last month during a hearing that Jack Smith violated his oath of office by secretly subpoenaing phone records of federal lawmakers. That's a big no-no. But Jack Smith didn't stop there, she said. He also made sure that we didn't find out about this deep invasion of our privacy, ensuring that an Obama appointee, Judge James Boasberg, signed non-disclosure orders that were attached to the subpoenas and had no basis in fact. They thought they could hide it and that we would never know. So with the existence of the subpoenas being first reported in November of last year, Blackburn said she was considering legal action against Smith and others that are now gone from the Justice Department. Don't know where that's gone, but I would love to see it. When the existence of those subpoenas was admitted, in addition to Blackburn and Jordan, we found out that Arctic Frost also saw subpoenas issuing phone records for U.S. Senators Bill Hagerty, Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, Josh Hawley, Dan Sullivan, Tommy Tuberville, Ron Johnson, Cynthia Loomis, and U.S. Representative Mike Kelly. So I can understand why they tried to go after Phil Klein. The Amistad Project was doing good work, but unfortunately never seemed like anything came of it. All right, now we're going to transition over to Arizona. John Solomon did a number of interviews earlier today. First, here he is on War Room talking about the FBI's investigation into Arizona. Of course, Arizona, as we learned yesterday, recently had a secret grand jury which determined it was necessary for the FBI to go in and get terabytes upon terabytes of election information to see just how many laws have been broken. Let's take a listen.
The FBI is very clear. It says that they have corroborated.
No, they have not taken Jack Smith's law license because the body that governs the seizure of somebody's law license is filled with Democrats and communists, and they love Jack Smith for what he did. So, no, unfortunately, they're never going to take his law license. They're probably going to give him a Nobel Prize.
They have substantiated, that's the actual word in the affidavit, to the satisfaction of a judge, a magistrate who issued the search warrant, that certain procedures were not followed in Georgia, and I assume we'll find something similar in Maricopa when everything's unsealed. In other words, they didn't follow state law in the administration of a federal election. And under Section 152 of the statute, federal statute, a willful and intentional act that does not follow state election law can be charged as a federal crime. What they're trying to do here, by their own admission, this isn't me, it's the FBI saying what they're doing, which none of those yahoos on TV apparently bothered to read. They're not trying to relitigate 2020 and declare a new winner. They're not trying to prove that Donald Trump won the election. They have reason to believe that these areas did not follow election laws in the administration, and they intend to bring accountability so that in future elections they'll do so. And here's one of the things that those yahoos on TV don't want to talk about. It will soon become obvious. It's already obvious in my reporting yesterday. The Trump FBI, if you want to call it that, the Kash Patel FBI, is looking at the 2024 election in Arizona. Now, wait a second. Newsflash to everyone. Donald Trump won that election. He was declared the winner, right? Republicans had a good year in Maricopa County and in Arizona in 2024. Why would the FBI look at that? Because it's not about who won. The FBI is trying to hold accountable people who may not have followed the proper rules and regulations for election. Now, that's an allegation that some people have made. We have to wait and see what it is. In Fulton County, it is very clear that the FBI substantiated certain irregularities. They're saying that. In Arizona, the grand jury subpoena and the search warrant remain sealed. I believe when it is unsealed, we'll see some predicate there. We'll understand why it is that they're looking at this. This is not an effort to redeclare a new winner from the 2020 election. It's to force these locations to make sure they're in compliance with state and federal law. That's all this is about.
So we already know that they didn't follow state or federal law. If that's the only predicate that they're using to go after people and file charges, this is going to be a slam dunk. There have been so many different indications, 2020, 2022, 2024, across the board. Doesn't matter who the declared winner was. That's not the point of the investigation. And I know that people want the truth of 2020 to come out. They want the truth of 2022 to come out. What I'm saying to you is that the truth is an inevitability. When it becomes clear that it's provable, election laws were not followed, because the results of those election laws having not been followed are what gave us the results of the 2020-2022 elections. Now, the brilliance of this strategy is that they're looking at an election that was hotly contested, that we all believe was fraudulent, 2020, and then they're also going to be looking at an election, 2024, that President Trump won. They're going to be looking at an election, 2022, that Abe Hamada and Kari Lake believe also were stolen from them as well. So the span of this investigation is going to go across multiple lines, party lines on both sides. And the only thing we're looking for is whether or not the law was implemented. It wasn't. That will lead to indictments. And that's where we're going with this. And of course, it also opens the door for the investigations that we expect to see in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, hope in California. The list is never ending as to where this could go. But we have to take it in the order that the FBI decides it. Now, we also have this little tidbit from John Solomon. He is once again telling us that very soon there will be an announcement made to the American people and intelligence given to Congress, which will force the hand of Congress and force the passing of the SAVE Act. And once again, it has everything to do with foreign influence in U.S. elections. Let's take a listen.
Your take on Maricopa County. You're saying that what's going to happen is we're going to find out the Chinese had a major hand in rigging election. What's your take on the raid yesterday in Maricopa?
Yeah, it wasn't really a raid. It was a grand jury subpoena, but they grabbed the stuff. There will be some search warrants executed in the coming days based on my reporting. They're looking at, in Maricopa County, it's a very technical thing, just like it was in Georgia. Did you follow state law? Because if you didn't administer a federal election as it was supposed to be under state law, you can be charged federally. It's just about doing the right thing and following the law. But above that, not in Maricopa County, not in Fulton County, there is an extraordinary review going on by the CIA director, the FBI director, the director of national intelligence, so Tulsi Gabbard, John Ratcliffe, and Kash Patel. They have found a body of documents that I think will trouble all of us and probably will have a profound effect on the Senate debate over the Save America Act. A lot of senators are sitting up there saying, I don't know if I need to vote for this. I don't know what the politics is. Wait a second. When they find out that maybe voter identities in their state databases were penetrated by China and used in influence operations, that may change their mind. And so I think the debate in the Senate could be informed by what comes out in the next few weeks.
Oh, fascinating. Oh, that's...
All right. So it can't happen soon enough. We need it to happen right now. Now, once again, here is John Solomon this time discussing the timeline. He says we are going to get disclosure on this over the next 10 days.
Now, over the next 10 days, Steve, we're going to have a lot more. We are going to be able to get, for the first time, I've been able to start these documents, large body of evidence that's in the intelligence community that raises concerns about foreign interference in our elections. That'll probably be the end of this week or early next week. The documents are explosive. They're really remarkable.
Likely, I think that this is going to be a release from Tulsi Gabbard and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence.
And what's most remarkable is that all this has been kept a secret from the American people, possibly President Trump in some cases, until recently, of course, when his team told him. Now, over the next 10...
All right. In addition to that, we also have an update on a story relating to voter fraud that took place not that long ago in Monroe County. I told you about 3 women in Alabama that were just arrested for filling out and submitting dozens of fake absentee ballots. It turns out that 2 of those 3 women that were just indicted on voter fraud charges are actually employees of the Monroe County Courthouse. So if anybody should have known better, it was these girls.
New tonight, Fox 10 investigates, confirming 2 courthouse employees are among 3 people indicted on voter fraud charges in Monroe County. We broke this story on our digital platforms this afternoon.
Fox 10 News has learned one of the suspects is a judicial assistant and another is a now former security guard at the Monroe County Courthouse. Our Natalie Williamson has been looking into this.
Natalie, you're also finding out one of the accused has held multiple positions at the courthouse.
Yeah, that's right, Lenny's and Cameron. The Monroe County Probate Court tells me Samantha Kiles previously worked for the probate court. Tonight, while it's unclear if Kiles and Sarah Bennett used their positions to carry out the cheating allegations in the Frisco City municipal election, a resident of this small town is speaking out.
Tonight, Fox 10 Investigates has confirmed a judicial assistant and a court security guard are among the people indicted for voter fraud in Monroe County. It's a story we first reported 2 weeks ago. According to Monroe County probate judge Sonia Stinson, 46-year-old Samantha Kiles is a judicial assistant for Judge Donna Silcox, and 59-year-old Sarah Bennett was a security guard at the Monroe County Courthouse. Stinson tells me Bennett's last day on the job was last Wednesday. The Monroe County Probate Court says Kiles previously worked for the probate court and left that position in 2019. Along with Kiles and Bennett, 67-year-old Sharon Denson was also indicted. Court documents say all 3 women filled out a total of 20 illegal absentee ballots in the Frisco City municipal election last August. They're charged with the unlawful use of absentee ballots and submitting false absentee ballot applications. One Frisco City resident who didn't want to be identified says this breaks trust.
I was just in shock. I was like, clearly there has to be some sort of flaw in the system to get people to this point. You know, to have made a decision like that, knowing this community, being part of this community, and still deciding to switch a line like that.
Fox 10 News received this statement from Kyle's attorney, Max Cassidy. It reads in part, quote, "While the indictment formally charges Ms. Kiles with violations of Alabama codes, these are strictly unproven allegations at this stage."
I've reached out to Bennett's attorney but have not heard back. I've also reached out to Judge Silcox to ask about Kaya's employment status, and I'm waiting to hear back. Lenise.
So Misfit Angie says, Zach, I don't know if you covered this or not, but Governor Whitmer in Michigan was caught in a sex scandal and a lot of her staff had left. I have not covered that. I haven't seen anything related to it, but I have to believe they don't call her Stretchin' Gretchen for nothing. She's kind of got that look about her, doesn't she? I don't know. I'll see what I can find on that and maybe report on that tomorrow. I haven't heard anything about it. And I was just searching real quick on X, and the only thing I see is President Trump making mention of working with Gretchen Whitmer to take on the Asian carp, which is quite literally taking over Michigan waterways right now. Asian carps, here, if you guys don't know, Asian carps are those fish that literally jump out of the water when you drive by in your boat, and they'll just jump right into your boat. The only problem is they're a carp. They're like a trash fish. But take a look. They take over the waterways. They outcompete native species, and they just fly out of the water. They're so nervous. It's absolutely insane. They're not really good to eat, but I think that the Chinese will eat them. Yeah. All right. Okay, so where do we stand on the SAVE Act? If there is going to be intelligence delivered to the American people and to Congress, proving what we already know, that foreign influence in American elections is present at all levels, that the results of our elections are untrustworthy because anybody can vote, citizen or not. We keep showing cases every single day of regular Americans, illegal aliens, politicians engaging in voter fraud, election fraud, widespread and micro. But I would love it if we could get Congress on board to pass the SAVE Act, among many other things. But Mark Meadows has published a list on X telling us exactly which Republican senators are ready to produce the standing filibuster so they can get the SAVE Act passed, and which of those within the Senate are not willing to stand behind the standing filibuster. You know, the only difference is that they would make people go up to the podium and speak, essentially giving their reasoning for why they don't want to vote for it. Obviously, you know, every single Democrat has whatever they're going to say about it. But I want to hear from Republicans. I want to hear them make a case to the American people why it's not a good idea to ensure that American citizens are the only ones voting in American elections. So he said, I'm going to keep posting our whip count so America knows which senators are supportive of passing the SAVE Act via the standing filibuster. As promised, I'll update this list daily as more senators join the fight. So according to Meadows, this is the list who have already signaled support. I'm not going to read through all of them because it's a lot. Let's go ahead and look at the ones who won't stand behind it. And you know what? It's damn near as long as the list of people who will stand behind it. But these are the people who are missing in action. These are the GOP senators that are not on the list. Feel free to invite them to show their support. We've got John Barrasso of Wyoming, John Boozman of Arkansas, Shelley Moore Capito of West Virginia, Susan Collins of Maine, Tom Cotton of Arkansas. I saw a rumor today that Tom Cotton was having an affair with a male donor, and the reason it's going to come to light is because it was part of the divorce proceedings for the male donor. Tom, you got something you want to tell us? Anyways, Kevin Kramer, North Dakota. Mike Crapo, Idaho. John Curtis of Utah. Steve Daines of Montana. Deb Fisher of Nebraska. Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. Chuck Grassley of Iowa. John Hoeven of North Dakota. Jim Justice of West Virginia. John Kennedy of Louisiana. James Lankford of Oklahoma. Mitch McConnell of Kentucky. Jerry Moran of Kansas. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. Pete Ricketts of Nebraska. Tim Scott of South Carolina. John Thune of South Dakota. Tom Tillis of North Carolina. And Roger Wicker of Mississippi. And Todd Young of Indiana. Many of those you expect to see. Some of them don't really expect to see. I saw John Kennedy talking about being in favor of passing the SAVE Act, but perhaps it's just because they don't want to use the standing filibuster. I mean, these people seem to be perennially against the idea of doing work that is necessary to get these things passed. Like, they just don't want to put in the hours on it. They want to make sure they get to go home early. They want to make sure they get a 4-day work week. But I was kind of surprised to see John Kennedy's name on the list of people who are not ready to use the standing filibuster. Why not? Do it. Get it done. Now, what's really outrageous about it is that John Thune literally just gave an interview to Punchbowl News, a news organization which is funded to the tune of like $10 million by many organizations that John Thune is aligned with because they're donors to him. But John Thune is claiming that the voices that are in support of the Save America Act are essentially paid influencers, that somehow the support for the Save America Act is not organic, that it's actually coming from people who are being paid to shill for the Save Act. Let me go on the record right now. I have never been paid from anybody to support any legislation for anything. And if I come on this show and I tell you guys that I'm in favor of passing something or I'm not in favor of passing something, it is my opinion and my opinion alone. I can't tell you a single person that I know that's been paid to say, Save America Act is good, and we should get John Thune to pass this because I'm getting a big check from some company in the background. It's never happened. So he was giving an interview to NBC News, and Brennan Leach says, I asked John Thune if he feels pressure to pass the Save America Act mounting. He said, a lot of that is, it's kind of, paid influencer ecosystem, he said. And he added there's support among some GOP senators, but the process and how you ultimately try and get a result is still unclear to me. So, again, what is it that you do for a living, John Thune? This is the only job you've ever had. And you are the leader of the Senate. You would think that you would be a problem solver, that you would figure out how to get things done. But I honestly believe that this is all going back to John Cornyn, his partner in crime. Him and John Cornyn, they were essentially hand-fed from babies by Mitch McConnell. So now he's suggesting, though, that the millions of Americans who believe that you should prove your identity and your status as an American are merely being paid to do so. That's one of the stupidest takes I've ever heard. So this is the numbers here. 71% of Americans support the Save America Act. That's 69% of independents and just half of Democrats. 81% of Americans require voter ID. 79% of independents and 70% of Democrats. 80% want states to purge non-citizens from the voter rolls. 75% support proof of citizenship to vote. 61% support sharing unredacted voter rolls with the Department of Homeland Security. 60% call the Save America Act a common sense way to stop fraud and protect the security of our elections. 58% recognize at least some voter fraud exists in the United States. 85% agree only U.S. citizens should vote in our elections. Are you kidding me? 15% of the people out there think non-citizens should vote. And that includes 84% of independents and 82% of Democrats. Now, the numbers align with polling that pretty much shatters the Democrats' narrative. The Pew Research Center, they are not conservative. 83% of Americans, including wide majorities of Democrats, independents, whites, blacks, and Latinos, favor voter ID requirements. Gallup, 84% support voter ID. 98% of Republicans, 84% of independents, 67% of Democrats, and equally robust 83% back proof of citizenship for voter registration. Rasmussen reports, this is probably one of the most conservative on here. They found that 75% support voter ID, with support having increased over the last decade. Heritage Action, strong majorities across 5 battleground states support the Save America Act. Additional surveys from Napolitan News, the Center Square, all consistently reveal extraordinarily bipartisan support for voter ID. So the support for securing our election at the basic level is not like, a partisan issue. It transcends politics. It is across the board. And the only people who seem to not be in support of it are the people who could make it happen. That's a nuclear bomb. That's the sound of a nuclear bomb falling. Oh, my God. So it's not, maybe there are some people out there who like make a great living as paid influencers, but I don't even think that they're out there stumping for the Save America Act because they're getting paid to do it. Misfit Angie. Okay, here is the story about Stretch and Gretchen. Thank you, Angie. Trying to get that link. Let's see. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer can forget about running for president. Her chief of staff walked out. Her communications director gave notice that she's leaving at the end of the month after the governor was caught in a friends with benefits affair with a low-level staffer, probably a younger man. It's not the kind of scandal that a governor can survive in a state like Michigan. There are already dozens of recall petitions circulating at grocery stores across the state. Well, okay, so it's a meme. It's a headline, but we don't have any reporting on it. Let's see. Gretchen Whitmer staff affair. Yeah, the only thing that I'm seeing come up is this kind of money scandal that happened last year. $20 million. We talked about that on the show at the time. State grants that basically just got handed out to anybody who stuck their hands out. All right, I'll keep watching, Angie, and I'll tell you guys if I find anything about it. But, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not, like, totally surprised. All of these people, you guys are sexual deviants. And this is, like, that's what they do. They basically, they have sex with everybody, okay? And it's the same way in Washington. I'm sorry to tell you, but I have heard some stories. I have heard some stories from people who stand up there, pious as all get out, not Tim Burchett, not Thomas Massey. It was one of the things I respected about Thomas Massey, and not Governor DeSantis, but just about everybody else is out there. Freya, I was young and vulnerable. Oh my God. But yeah, most of those people are out there just doing whatever. Like Corey Mills. We haven't heard about Corey Mills in a long time. All the stuff Corey Mills was doing, par for the course. Okay, that's basically how these people handle themselves. All right, so Mike Lee has shot back at John Thune after this comment. And also, just in case anybody who's watching happens to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, of which Mike Lee is, on Baseless Conspiracies, we had a young former member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church, called into the show, had some less than flattering things to say about the church. I will fully admit I have some issues with the doctrine, and but I would always say that I have never met a Mormon who is not one of the most kindest and decent people. They're always great people. But I think there are some problems with the church. Now, I don't mean that to be an indictment of all people who are of the Mormon faith. And somebody, I think, was highly offended that that call happened. But we didn't plan for it. That just happened to be the people who called in. But I have criticisms for just about all, well, no, not even just about, all organized religions. The problem, in my mind, tends to be the leadership in churches. Very often, large religious organizations are suffering from the exact same problems that we see in Washington, D.C., whether it is the misuse of funds, either from the taxpayers or the parishioners, abuse of power in terms of sex or the abuse of children. It's all the same. And the reason behind that is because the type of people who want to do those things seek out positions of power, whether it's in the Catholic Church or the Mormon Church or Pentecostal, doesn't matter. Across the board, you're going to have scumbags who get into positions of power. And, of course, I got problems with doctrine with a whole bunch of different faiths that aren't my faith, which is Christianity. And even amongst sects of Christianity, all right, you've got different interpretations of things. And it is what it is. It is what it is. But I meant no disrespect when that young man called into the show. So I just wanted to put that out there for anybody who might have been offended. However, I'm not gonna say it. Okay. Anyways, Mike Lee put this video out and seems to be responding directly to Senator John Thune, asking his supporters if they support the Save America Act.
Over the last few months, tens of millions of Americans have jumped on the cause of supporting the Save America Act and using the talking filibuster to advance it. I regret that some in Washington tonight are dismissing all those who feel this way and who have weighed in as somehow paid influencers or the product of paid influencers. This is wrong. So if you're hearing this message and you agree with these objectives, please redouble your efforts. Make clear this is not the product of paid influencers. These are real Americans doing what Americans do best.
All right. Now, here we also have Caroline Levitt, who seems to have heard what John Thune said. At the press briefing earlier today, she went through a litany of information about the Save America Act, and some of those in the mainstream media who have been peddling misinformation also had an opportunity to ask her questions.
On another matter here at home, President Trump is urging Congress to pass the Save America Act, one of the most critical pieces of legislation in history. The Save America Act is overwhelmingly popular with all Americans because each provision is rooted in common sense. The Save America Act has 5 simple requirements as requested by the President of the United States. Number 1, voters have to show ID to cast a ballot in an American election. Very simple. 90% of Americans, including more than 80% of Democrat voters, agree with this. Number 2, the Save America Act will require all voters to show proof of citizenship in order to register to vote in American elections. Again, this is popular and rooted in common sense. Only American citizens have the right to vote in American elections. But after Joe Biden and the Democrats allowed tens of millions of illegal aliens into our country, it's more important than ever to ensure that only American citizens are registering to vote on our nation's voter rolls, and Congress needs to pass this. Number 3, the Save America Act abolishes the incredibly unsecure practice of universal mail-in ballots, which throw the door wide open for fraud. Importantly, the Save America Act maintains exceptions for Americans to use mail-in ballots like for illness, disability, military, or travel reasons. The bipartisan 2005 report of the Commission on Federal Election Reform, chaired by, of all people, former President Jimmy Carter and former Secretary of State James Baker, concluded that, quote, absentee ballots remain the largest source of potential voter fraud, and it is time for Congress to finally address this. Number 4, the Save America Act permanently bans men from competing in women's sports. President Trump signed a landmark executive order upholding the promise of Title IX and ending this dangerous and unfair practice. But now it's time for Congress to codify this into law. Number 5, the Save America Act bans transgender mutilation surgery for children. Again, President Trump signed a common sense executive order to do this and kept his promise to the American people, but now Congress needs to do the same and codify it. It's well past time for Democrats in Congress to stop perpetuating the radical and false claim that you can somehow change a child's sex. You cannot. Passing the Save America Act is the most important thing that Republicans and, frankly, Democrats can do to strengthen election integrity and protect our democracy. It's what the American people elected Republicans to do, and they must deliver on it as soon as possible. The president is calling on Congress to get the job done and send this historic piece of legislation to his desk immediately for signature.
Now, what I'm really looking forward to is President Trump sticking to his guns and not signing any other legislation until the Save America Act comes before his desk, because that means FISA is not going to be renewed. Highly relevant given the topic of conversation earlier in the show with the FBI counterintelligence investigations into President Trump and his supporters. Also, of course, the DHS is not going to be refunded as long as the Democrats want to ensure that ICE will not be around to check polling places, because they know that the illegal aliens they allowed into the country are probably going to show up at those polling places. Now, one of these pieces of misinformation that I mentioned is that Democrats are telling people that married women will not be able to vote if the SAVE Act passes. I mean, ultimate manifestation of retardation in this question. I got to refresh.
One of the biggest things that the Democrats are saying, the claims that they're making, is that the Save America Act, it would prevent married women from voting in elections or make it harder for them. What do you have to say to those claims? Is there any validity to them, and where do you think they're getting this from?
There is zero validity to these claims, and I'm glad that you brought them up, because you have the Democrats who have created this myth, and it has been perpetuated, unfortunately, by many in the mainstream media. Let me be very clear. The Save America Act does not prohibit anyone from voting, with the exception of illegal aliens. And the greatest way to disenfranchise American citizens from voting in American elections is to allow illegal aliens to vote, which is what Democrats want to do. We see it taking place in Democrat jurisdictions at the state and local level across this country. So the Save America Act corrects that. And as far as married women who have changed their name, if they're already registered to vote, they're entirely unaffected by the SAVE Act. And for the small fraction of individuals who have changed their name or their address, they can still register to vote, of course. They just have to go through their state processes to update that documentation. And this is something that the American people, married women, and minorities and people all across this country who Democrats are insultingly saying cannot do this, they're already doing it every day, going to the Social Security office, going to the DMV, and I think it's frankly insulting that the Democrats are saying that there are certain groups of people in this country who aren't smart enough to update their documentation to allow them to vote. Again, this is a huge myth, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to address it.
Of course, the Democrats would do just that. They've long suggested that black people are not smart enough to get a driver's license, even though you got to have a driver's license to get a hotel room or buy a pack of cigarettes or whatever it might be. Now they're saying that women are not smart enough to figure out how to change their names on official documents. Now, before we continue with the next story, I have one final message from our friends over here on Rumble. It is a new era for America First international assistance. President Trump has been pretty clear on this. America is not going to hesitate to act, and we won't write blank checks. So from now on, U.S. assistance is going to be strategic, accountable, and tied to results that make America safer and more secure. That means stronger borders, tougher enforcement, and real cooperation to stop illegal immigration and keep those deadly drugs out of our precious American communities. American First assistance will stabilize fragile regions before crises reach our shores, strengthen key partners, and support American farmers, manufacturers, and workers. 80% of President Trump's voters support such international assistance. And to Beijing, if you're using aid to buy influence and control, the game is changing. America will lead with strength, with purpose, and with conditions that put our security first. To find more, you can use that QR code that you see on screen. Thank you very much to the good folks over there at Rumble. Now, also in relation to that, we have a pretty incredible announcement that I just saw President Trump share over here on Rapid Response 47. Let me pull this up. All right, so America is returning to real energy dominance. Today, I am proud to announce that America First Refining is opening the first new U.S. oil refinery in 50 years in Brownsville, Texas. This is a historic $300 billion deal, the biggest in U.S. history. It's a massive win for American workers, energy, and the great people of South Texas. Thank you to our partners in India and their largest privately held energy company, Reliance, for this tremendous investment. It is because of our America First agenda, streamlining permits and lowering taxes, that have attracted billions of dollars in deals coming back to our nation. A new refinery at the Port of Brownsville will fuel U.S. markets, strengthen our national security, boost American energy production, deliver billions of dollars in economic impact, and will be the cleanest refinery in the world. It will power global exports and bring thousands of long overdue jobs and growth to a region that deserves it. This is what American energy dominance looks like. America first, always. So glad to see it. This is something we desperately need. I can't believe it's been 50 years since we've had a new oil refinery built down here. That's nuts. All right, now, a federal appeals court has just slapped a lower court judge across the face. This is that woman from Chicago who had attempted to use her power as a U.S. district judge to essentially put handcuffs on Greg Bovino. Now, this is all from the legal battles over Operation Midway Blitz. Sarah Ellis is her name. She's an appointee of Barack Hussein Obama. She had issued a number of orders that limited tactics agents could use, including the use of tear gas and absurdly requiring daily court appearances from Border Patrol Commander Greg Bovino. So the U.S. 7th Circuit Court of Appeals, in a 2-1 ruling last Thursday, overturned Ellis's injunction, describing it as constitutionally suspect and criticizing the dismissal of the underlying lawsuit. The case originated from a class action suit that was filed in October by protesters, journalists, and religious leaders against Department of Homeland Security officials, which included Greg Bovino. The plaintiffs alleged First Amendment violations, Fourth Amendment violations arising from the use of excessive force, and a number of other claims related to the protests. Now, Ellis granted initially a preliminary injunction November 6th that restricted riot control weapons like tear gas unless there was an immediate threat, mandating body cameras and requiring visible identification for agents, a dangerous demand given the amount of violence that the radical left has been perpetrating against them, trying to dox them, harass ICE agents and their families, and at times attempt to drive their cars over them. Didn't turn out so well for Renee Good. Now, the activist judge also accused Greg Bovino of lying under oath about what happened during the protests, including his claim that he was hit by a rock before deploying tear gas in Little Village. The appeals court had previously intervened. They stayed Ellis's order for daily reports from Bovino back in October, and they halted the preliminary injunction in November by calling it overbroad and an infringement of the separation of powers. So in January, the plaintiffs moved to dismiss the lawsuit after agents were withdrawn, but Ellis expressed concerns about dismissing the lawsuit due to ongoing enforcement threats and a related shooting that took place in Minneapolis. So the majority was pretty critical of Judge Ellis for dismissing the suit without prejudice, even though the parties didn't ask for it, which left the door open for plaintiffs to refile that case at some point down the road, just in case we ended up back in Chicago. Because the district court dismissed the case without prejudice against the plaintiff's unopposed request for a dismissal with prejudice, any class members or the lead plaintiffs could just refile the claim tomorrow, the majority said. They could ask the district court to reinstate a near-identical preliminary injunction, adopting the facts and legal reasoning from the district court's original order. The majority opinion also said they can help avoid that pitfall by vacating the order that depends on these conclusions. Now, Greg Bovino has been reassigned. He's still obviously with the CBP. But this new ruling by the 7th Court has now vacated the injunction because the lawsuit has been dismissed. So in Chicago, if they end up going back there, they can use riot control gear. However, a federal judge in another location has just restricted the use of tear gas and riot control gear, this time in Portland, Oregon, which, if you've been watching since the beginning, you probably realize this is where we need it more than any place else.
Well, a judge in Oregon has put new limits on federal agents' use of tear gas and other crowd control weapons during protests outside the ICE building in Portland. The ruling comes after the ACLU of Oregon filed a lawsuit claiming federal officers using chemical munitions violates First Amendment rights. Witnesses at the hearing include this one, a protester known for wearing a chicken costume at rallies. The judge who issued the preliminary injunction mentioned pepper spray, also known as OC spray, in his written opinion. Quote, videos show DHS officers spraying OC spray directly into the faces of peaceful and nonviolent protesters engaged in, at most, passive resistance. Defendants' conduct physically harming protesters and journalists without prior dispersal warnings is objectively chilling. And
this is U.S. District Judge Michael Simon. All of that is bullshit.
He's making those objectively chilling remarks in reference to the First Amendment rights of the protest.
Each and every one of those people who got OC spray, pepper spray in the face, were warned. They were not acting peacefully, and they were doing everything they could to incite the officers to get the result that they did, because they knew that they wanted to bring this suit. They knew that the ACLU was going to support them. And they knew that, of course, a left-wing judge in left-wing Portland was most likely going to side with them. Of course, much like any of these situations, this will not be the end of this case. It will undoubtedly be appealed. Now, we also have speaking of Greg Bavino, we have a new whistleblower complaint that has just been filed, this time with the Inspector General for the Department of Homeland Security. And they are accusing the CBP Commissioner Rodney Scott of abusing his authority to target internal subordinates. And that includes an alleged attempt to set a perjury trap for Border Patrol Chief Greg Bavino. Now, I don't know if that perjury trap is the same case that we just were speaking about in Illinois, but that judge accused Greg Bavino of committing perjury. He didn't. He did have a rock thrown at him. And I wonder if Rodney Scott was perhaps coordinating with that judge and suggested that she go ahead and ask Greg Bavino about that, or perhaps ask another question that might potentially put him in a position where he could be accused of perjury. Since this is a new revelation, we don't have any additional details to share at this time, but undoubtedly if a whistleblower has come forward and it's now being reported, we are going to be learning more about this in the future. I know nothing about Rodney Scott. I don't know his history. I don't know where he came from, but I figured we would do a quick live dive on CBP Commissioner Rodney Scott and see what might come up. We have him right here. That's his official account. And President Trump actually mentioned him back on January 19th. Great interview today of Rodney Scott, the CBP commissioner, by the wonderful Will Cain on The Will Cain Show. Thank you both. On January 27th, Tony Saruga says, I've been told by two sources in the know that Rodney Scott, the commissioner of the CBP, was upset Commander Bavino had bypassed normal chains of command, reporting directly to Nome in an unusual setup, which created tensions with Scott and others like CBP Chief Mike Banks, and without the president's knowledge, made the decision that led to Bavino being relieved of duty and reassigned from his role as Border Patrol Commander at Large, overseeing the operations in Minnesota. So this is from that dust up when everybody online was saying that Bavino had been fired. And anyways, it ended up being a big nothing burger. But apparently there was a little bit of there was an uncomfortable atmosphere there. All right. So here, Ruben Gallego, of course, the man who stole the election from Kerry Lake in 2022, is questioning CBP Commissioner Rodney Scott about the shooting death of Renee Nicole Good. Let's see how that's handled.
After Renee Good was shot, the agent called her I quote, a fucking bitch on camera.
Well, she did try to run him over with her car. I mean, you know.
Yes or no? Is this how your agents are trained to act? And I'll go to Chairman Scott. Sorry, Chairman, Mr. Scott.
No, sir.
Is that professional in that regard? I asked this earlier. You know, your weapons, your agents, Director Lyons, are trained in weapons handling, correct?
Yes, sir.
They're also trained to shoot abroad if she's trying to drive them over with her car. Like, that's just the way that it is. Anyways, I don't know anything about his politics. This is based, though. This is our effing city. I think people heard Greg Bavino say that, and either you loved him more or you hated him more. But you already loved him or you already hated him.
Well, you better hope so. You better hope you get being pardoned, because you will be held accountable for the absolute disregard of the law your agencies have shown over the past year. Your agencies have lost the trust of the American people, with millions taking to the streets to protect the illegal actions of your agencies. And that's why I introduced a bill in the United States Congress to abolish ICE. ICE must be abolished.
I don't know who writes this guy's stuff, but Sri Chanadar seems like he doesn't even understand half of what he's saying. All right, now, what's interesting is that NBC News just did a poll, and they determined that more Americans support ICE than support the Democrat Party, which is pretty funny, especially since it's coming from NBC. So the Democratic Party has a low favorability rating, much lower than their Republican rivals, President Trump, and even the much maligned Immigration and Customs Enforcement, according to a stunning new poll of registered voters. NBC News, and you know that NBC is going to be polling largely left-wing listeners because that's who's listening to them, found that 30% of respondents had a very positive or somewhat positive view of Democrats. Of course, the alternative to that is 70% have an unfavorable view of the Democrats, while 52% had a very negative or somewhat negative view of Democrats. The overall net rating was -22. The alarmingly low score still represents a recovery for the party from its low point of a -28 in March of 2025, 27% positive, 55% negative. By contrast, President Trump scored a -12 favorability rating, which is 41% positive, 53% negative, and the Republican Party recorded a -14 favorability rating, 37% positive, 51% negative. Despite heavy messaging by Democrats against ICE in recent months, the NBC survey found 38% had positive views of the agency compared to 56% with negative views, for a net rating of -18. It's still better than the opposition party can manage. In fact, only the nation of Iran, -53 rating, 8% positive, 61% negative, drew a lower net rating than Democrats of the 14 name-tested people and entities. That is so funny. Oh, my gosh. All right. Now, this is actually in regards to Michigan. So I should have pulled this up when we were talking about Michigan earlier. But Representative Wolford, Michigan state rep, testified under oath in a state legislative hearing that he used a fake name and the address of Governor Gretchen Whitmer's home to apply for state benefits, and he was approved without any questions. He didn't even have to provide a social security number. So this just goes to show you that Michigan probably has just as big a problem with fraud as any place else in the country. Minneapolis, Ohio, Maine, you name it.
I brought up the website where you can apply for benefits. I started applying for those benefits using Governor Whitmer's address, so a real address with a fake name. I was able to bypass the Social Security, alien number, and never getting denied benefits at the very end, getting registered to vote. So my question is, why would we not mandate Social Security numbers or alien numbers on a website? I brought up the—
Wow. Not only did he get benefits, but he also was able to register to vote without having to prove anything. My goodness. Things are not looking good. Let me say thank you very much to Sean Joe for 123 cookies. Thank you to 2 in the Pink for a cookie. Thank you to Sean Joe for another cookie. Thank you to Filter Dog, who says Dilly knows all about stretching Gretchen. I bet he does. One Thunder, thank you for the can. And Sean Joe, thank you for the cookie. I appreciate it. Yes, casting no aspersions on Dilly. But yeah, Gretchen Whitman. I'm sure there's a lot of people who know even more about stretching Gretchen. All right, so interesting update on the Jeffrey Epstein situation. It appears that the ex-wife of Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, is talking, and it seems that she has confirmed that Mark Epstein was a co-conspirator right along with his brother on the sex trafficking of young women.
Mark Epstein not only knew about his brother's trafficking operation, but he helped to facilitate it. I am back at the condo building owned by Mark Epstein for another episode of Mark v. Mark, where I am investigating Mark Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein rented 15 apartments in this building that became the nexus of his New York trafficking operation. Growing up, Mark and Jeff were known as the Dirt Brothers, but here, Mark says their only relationship was landlord and tenant. When asked if their affairs went any further, Mark said, "I don't have time to talk about it." So, let's talk about it. Court records show that this is where children, either procured from local high schools or from overseas, were stashed and made to live as underage prostitutes in the condos, many times 4 to a room. Virginia Guffrey stayed here and provided the FBI with photos of the interior. When confronted about the building again, Mark Epstein said, "I do not live in that building and I do not monitor who uses those apartments." He should have monitored it. His daughter lived there in a room furnished by Ghislaine Maxwell that was 1 floor above Epstein's primary supplier of victims, John Luke Brunel. Mark Epstein's ex-wife is the only Epstein who's ever been honest about what was actually happening here. She said that the building is co-owned by the Epstein brothers, and that the only reason that Jeffrey's apartments in particular have keypads is because so many girls ran away that the brothers got tired of rekeying the locks after each departure. There are numerous emails about changing the keypad codes. There are numerous emails of the brothers negotiating who would stay in which apartment. In an interview with the FBI, a victim says that Jeffrey called Mark to figure out the room that she was eventually kept in. In a deposition, Mark was asked, "Who are the residents that live in the apartments that Jeffrey Epstein rents at that location?" And Mark answered, "I have no idea." At the time of that statement, 2 of Epstein's co-conspirators were living in the building, and Mark's lawyer for this deposition was paid for by Jeffrey Epstein. Mark's answers for who he thought stayed at Jeffrey's apartments, his pilots. Now, in this email, Mark tells Jeffrey about how he ran into a girl on her phone in the building and could tell she was one of Jeffrey's because of, quote, the neon Bimbet sign over her head, and it does not sound like he thought she was a pilot. In this email, Mark mentions meeting a woman who once stayed at 301 and asked Jeffrey if they hooked up, and Jeffrey sarcastically responds, "No, I brought her here to sing. Did you hit her head?" To which Mark replies, "I thought she might have been too old for you," which says it all. When all of these girls who look so young were being driven up the road to Epstein's mansion, an address Mark called Offenders Row, did he think they were going there to sing? I don't think he did. I think he knew. And I don't think that he should be getting Jeffrey Epstein's inheritance, which will be the subject of the next episode of Mark v. Mark. And program note, I'm doing all of this on top of my regular job, so if you want to help the show, hit the Venmo so I can afford the Kevlar vest that I'm going to need when the Epsteins find out what I'm up to.
Good Lord. Mark Epstein has been notoriously tight-lipped on what he knew about his brother's comings and goings. That is a particularly damning indictment of Mark Epstein. We've seen a number of those emails that this young man was able to put together there, but I had never heard about Mark Epstein's ex-wife talking about what was going on in that building. How disgusting that Mark Epstein not only was aware that his brother was trafficking women and storing them in this building, but he actually assisted him in making sure that the girls would not be able to escape. At the same time, he had his own daughter living on an entire floor of this apartment building, knowing that 15 of those apartments were crammed full of 4 girls at a time, waiting to see exactly who they were going to be trafficked to. Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. They're pretty tight on keeping the dirt in. Yeah, they are. Seems like Mark Epstein is just as bad as his brother. No wonder they called them the Dirt Brothers. All right, now, finally, this is an interesting story, and I really have kind of stopped talking about the whole Charlie Kirk situation because the whole thing has put a bad taste in my mouth. There are people who are very supportive of Erica Kirk, and there are people who believe that Erica Kirk is, Satan incarnate, basically. I've chosen to stay away from the whole thing because I don't think there's really any way to get to any sort of objective truth about it. But Candace Owens has done a whole bunch of exposés on Erica Kirk, and if you want to see the deep dives on that stuff, I encourage you to go watch her channel and you can see what you think. But the reason this story caught my attention is because one of the stories that Candace Owens did about Erica Kirk involved her presence at an Air Force base just before Charlie was assassinated. And the reason she had that story is because somebody was at the Air Force base at the exact same time that Erica Kirk was. Now, Erica Kirk denies having been present there, but certainly if she visited the Air Force base, there would be some type of log. There would be some type of proof that she had come on because she's obviously not in the Air Force. Well, we just got word this morning that President Trump has appointed Erica Kirk to the U.S. Air Force Academy Board of Visitors. I thought it was an interesting choice, especially given the nature of that story that Candace Owens did. Now, I'm not saying one way or the other. whether or not it was true. I don't know. The guy who claimed to have seen Erica Kirk there, I mean, he seemed pretty credible to me. I don't think that he was profiting off of the claim that Erica was there. It's definitely something that's kind of a head scratcher and made me think. Anyways, President Trump has appointed Erica Kirk, the widow of Charlie Kirk, to fill a vacancy on the U.S. Air Force Academy's Board of Visitors. Now, this is not like a high-level DOD position. Somebody in the YouTube chat had asked about Erica Kirk being assigned to this like Pentagon position. You know, this is within the sort of sphere of that, but it's not like Erica Kirk is going to be making choices on, you know, what the Air Force does. I mean, this is specifically the U.S. Air Force Academy. So the U.S. Air Force Academy Association and Foundation commented shortly after Charlie's murder on September 10th, 2025. They said, "We are shocked and deeply saddened by the murder of Charlie Kirk, who was a member of the U.S. Air Force Academy Board of Visitors." So this is actually a position that Charlie held previously. Mr. Kirk was a passionate champion for our academy, its timeless mission, and the extraordinary cadets who have dedicated their lives to service before self. I had the privilege of serving alongside him on the U.S. Air Force Academy Board of Visitors this year, inspiring the next generation of service members together. My heart aches for the Kirk family as they navigate this unimaginable loss. Please join me in lifting his family and our entire nation up in prayer. That was Representative August Pfluger of Texas, also the chairman of the Board of Visitors. So the board advises the Department of War on morale, discipline, curriculum, instruction, physical equipment, fiscal affairs, academic methods, and other matters related to the academy, which is in Colorado Springs, Colorado. So the board consists of 6 members. They're all appointed by the president, 2 designated by the Speaker of the House of Representatives, 1 designated by the Minority Leader of the House of Representatives, 1 each designated by the Chair and Ranking Member of the House Armed Services Committee, 2 designated by the Majority Leader of the Senate, and 2 designated by the Minority Leader of the Senate, and 1 each designated by the Chair and Ranking Member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. So as a presidentially designated board member, Erica Kirk joins Senator Tommy Tuberville, Dan Clark, Doug Nicolai, and Dina Powell. So as a member of the Board of Visitors, Erica is one of 16 members responsible for making these recommendations I just mentioned to the Secretary of Defense about any changes that might be made at the Air Force Academy. The board also includes members of Congress, including 5th Congressional District Representative Jeff Crank of Colorado Springs, Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama, and Chairman Representative August Pfluger of Texas. The board is not the one who made the announcement of her appointment, but her name is now among the list of members. Turning Point USA and Erica Kirk did not respond to questions about her appointment to this board. During Charlie Kirk's short time on the board, he drew attention to construction delays at the chapel, and he encouraged the school to emphasize to their students what sets America apart. He said it's imperative that these cadets know that we are the greatest nation ever. So essentially, Erica is just taking the position that was vacated by her husband. It's interesting, okay, but I don't know that it means anything particularly scandalous or anything like that. Let's see. Okay, we got a couple of things here. Will to push forward says, Red Pill, there's an account, Wolves in Finance, I follow him, whom TPUSA is trying to have silenced under his threat to sue, and the details of suing is based on misrepresentations of the info, which shows true. I am familiar with Wolves in Finance. I subscribe to him, and I actually follow him. But I just figured Candace Owens was like the highest profile person who has continued to investigate Erica Kirk. But thank you. Everybody should check out Wolves in Finance. It's a great channel. Mokanon says Charlie was on the board as well. There we go. His passing his seat over to her also explains why he got the military transfer from Utah. Excellent. Exactly. And then Will to push forward, Zach, this person put out a video where there was money going, employees being fired without cause. I'm familiar. I definitely saw it. The details collected, etc., have been showing a great deal of legitimate suspicion. Just saying, I miss Charlie. Yes, I agree with you. I think that Charlie was a great man, but in the same way that large institutions with complicated bureaucracies, such as agencies within the federal government, corporations, banks, religious institutions. Anytime you've got that much money flowing in and out of an organization, there will inevitably be people who insert themselves so that they can profit for their own benefit. It is really sad. And I think that obviously anybody who's doing that with TPUSA or any organization, I don't care. I think that they should be exposed, and that should be brought to the surface. And yes, Patrick D35, Fort Huachuca, Huacha. I'm not exactly certain how to say it, but yes, I believe it was Fort Huacha that she was supposed to have been at. Okay. That was the name that I could not remember. So thank you very much for that, Patrick. I appreciate it. All right. Thank you also to Sean Joe for the cookie and Intolerant Leftists, who says Kirk was recommended by Representative Pfluger, who is the chair of that board. Yes, very similar to Erica taking over TPUSA in the position that her husband had previously had. That's exactly what this is. So again, I thought it was interesting because I saw people were talking about it, and I knew that people might mention it. But at the end of the day, Charlie's death was tragic. I still don't think we have the answers that we need, and I'm hoping that eventually the truth will come out, no matter who is responsible. All right, you guys, let's see here. I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything. See if anything came over the wires while we were live. All right, nothing new. Oh, I forgot to tell you all about this. The investigation into Zorro Ranch has officially begun. Wachua. Thank you, Mokanon. Wachua. Fort Wachua. That makes sense. Okay. So the investigation that I told you was going to begin at Zorro Ranch has already begun. This week, the state government of New Mexico has officially begun searching the property using advanced ground-penetrating radar and a whole host of other tools. I would imagine that would probably include cadaver dogs as well. So I think Zorro Ranch has the potential to be a major nexus for new information because obviously, for some reason, going back to Jeffrey Epstein's arrest in 2019 and then his death, the SDNY requested that the state of New Mexico hand over volumes of investigative material they had developed within the state over to them so that they could continue the investigation at the federal level. And then they told New Mexico that they would inform them of any leads that they came across. Of course, that never happened. Maureen Comey at the SDNY buried the investigation. Who knows how many documents were destroyed because with all of the Epstein files we've received, zero have anything to do with New Mexico's investigation into Zorro Ranch. They went on record and said that they handed over reams of interviews and investigative material. They were imploring the federal government to go in and search Zorro Ranch, to catalog everything that was in that house. Of course, none of that ever happened. The SDNY buried it. So now that they are finally getting an opportunity to get out there and investigate the larger property, which will include the state-owned land as well as the privately owned land, which Don Huffhines and his family now owns, there's a distinct possibility there may be something there. What's really tragic is that everything that was in that home is obviously going to be gone now. I mean, years later, it had transferred from Jeffrey Epstein's corporation's ownership now into the hands of private buyers. For several years, it was sitting vacant. We don't know what happened to the possessions that were in the home between that time. Couple of years passed in there. So pretty much everything that would have been at Zorro Ranch is now lost to history. It's just tragic. All right. Now, we do have this video right here from the New Mexico representative. This woman has made a name for herself recently by stumping for the Epstein victims, some of them victims, some of them co-conspirators. She's really latched onto it because she thought that it was going to be something that would be damaging to President Trump. But unfortunately for her, that hasn't been the case. However, since she is a representative from New Mexico, it gives an opportunity for us to perhaps get some closure on something and take us in an investigative direction that up until this point has essentially been left dormant.
Well, I am coming to you from New Mexico with a breaking update in the Epstein investigation.
Well, no, the thing is, Eric, New Mexico was not late to the party. They were right there. They were on the ground and they were working from the start. I think there was probably a lot of pushback from certain areas within the state government. Obviously, Bill Richardson, former governor of the state of New Mexico, he was a co-conspirator of Jeffrey Epstein. So undoubtedly, there were people that were looking to stifle that investigation, but they did their job. And then it was the FBI and the SDNY which dropped the ball. They were the ones who completely deep-sixed the investigation, and from all intents and purposes, it would appear they also destroyed all of that investigative material. But in terms of, the investigation now beginning, New Mexico, yeah, definitely late to the party.
And that is today, New Mexico's Department of Justice has begun its on-site investigation of Zorro Ranch. This investigation is crucial as a part of our larger investigation into the crimes that happened by Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and his associates here in New Mexico, as part of New Mexico's investigation through our state Department of Justice and our newly passed bipartisan Truth Commission. Now, one of the things that's important to know is that New Mexico's Zorro Ranch is a place where multiple crimes were reported both to federal authorities as well as state and local authorities. In fact, there are records dating back to the mid-1990s of abuse happening at the ranch, including a report to the FBI in 1996 by a survivor and multiple other reports over the years. And one of the significant and important pieces of this case is to understand why justice was never pursued at the state, local, or federal level. So this investigation is a crucial piece of trying to understand what happened at the ranch, to look for potential crimes that may have occurred on the ranch property, especially because after Jeffrey Epstein was arrested in 2019 and other properties were searched, Zorro Ranch was never properly searched, and because it is a crucial piece in getting to the bottom of truth and accountability here in our state, to hold those who are still able to be held accountable to the law, as well as seeking justice and healing for survivors here in our state. So we are so grateful for the work that the New Mexico Department of Justice is doing. We are so grateful for our state legislative leaders like State House Representative Andrea Romero and State House Representative Mariana Anaya, who are leading on our Truth Commission. And we are so grateful to all of the survivors and our community who has shown up, especially over the last several weeks, to show support for survivors. And I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you to everyone, all of the hundreds of New Mexicans who showed up yesterday to show their support for the survivors, to march and to stand in solidarity at Zorro Ranch yesterday. I had the opportunity to meet with survivors afterwards, and I want to share with you that what they shared with us is that they felt like New Mexico was home and had welcomed them. So thank you to all of our New Mexicans.
Man, I hate her performative attitude. She is also one of the members of Congress who would not vote for the reveal of members of Congress who have benefited from the taxpayer-funded slush fund that pays off sex abuse victims in Congress. So spare me your outrage, all right? I just don't buy it. But I'm glad that this investigation is finally happening. So, again, there is a $2.5 million Truth Commission that has been assembled by the state government there in New Mexico. And agents from the State Department of Justice, along with police, local sheriffs, they all started this search on Monday. It's still ongoing today. It's running parallel to the Truth Commission and was unanimously set up by local lawmakers last month. to find out exactly what happened at Zorro. This is not the kind of thing you can vote against. I mean, believe me, with all of the attention on Jeffrey Epstein, his crimes, trafficking children, trafficking young women, if anybody had voted against doing this search, it would have been an immediate career death knell. So, we have heard years of allegations and rumors about Epstein's activities in New Mexico, but unfortunately, federal investigators have failed to put together an official record. And this is State Representative Andrea Romero, who led the fight to establish the commission and is one of its 4 members. Now, the Daily Mail also, of course, reported that Bill and Hillary Clinton would routinely, on a yearly basis, visit Epstein Ranch with Chelsea Clinton. They were annual attendees of, I guess, holiday gatherings. They had a special cottage that Jeffrey Epstein had set up all for them. They would go there, and apparently people would come forward saying they were drugged, had sex organs and sperm harvested from their bodies. They would wake up around medical equipment, not knowing where they were or what happened to them. These are people who allegedly had some type of abuse that happened to them at Zorro Ranch. And I would imagine that the activities that were taking place there were probably so disturbing and so damaging to those that were associating with Jeffrey Epstein. That's more than likely why it was that the SDNY and the FBI buried this investigation and put it away. Now, I saw somebody ask about whether or not former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson had property close to Zorro Ranch. I have heard people say that, but I've never been able to substantiate the claim. So if he did, he perhaps may have owned it under the name of an LLC or something like that. But I've never seen anything to show that Bill Richardson had property next to Zorro Ranch. Certainly, I would say he probably visited Zorro Ranch. He was probably a frequent attendee. But other than that, I can't say with any certainty. All right, you guys, before we take off for the day, I do have one final message. You guys, it's inevitable. At this point, AI is coming for your job. I know that's probably pretty extreme to say, but CEOs and scientists right now building these artificial intelligence models are warning that AI is about to transform and perhaps even replace large parts of today's workforce much faster than people are prepared for. People are getting fired on a daily basis. I'm hearing about recent jobs that were just cut from Amazon. If you want to understand what's happening and how to prepare, you can visit drivegrowthhq.com and see what AI leaders are saying is coming next. It's delivered to you totally free by email, and the website, again, is drivegrowthhq.com. What it is a free analysis from Drive Growth HQ, and it examines what AI researchers, economists, and CEOs are saying about the future of work and the growing risk of labor disruption. The report also explains how AI is already reshaping industries, why experts and CEOs of major companies believe job displacement will accelerate in the coming months, not years, and what individuals and businesses should probably understand and do right now to make sure that you remain safe. So you can get this free report at drivegrowthhq.com, because who knows, your job may be next. And the real question isn't whether or not AI is going to change work. The question is whether you're going to be prepared when it does. You can use that QR code on screen as well. And thank you very much to the good folks over at Rumble. All right, final thank yous. Looks like I got nothing. And actually, there is no final thank yous. So let me just check real quick over on Ko-Fi. And looks like there is nothing new over on Ko-Fi. Okay, and just check real quick on Cash App. Okay, Elaine. Elaine says, best daily news coverage. Thank you so much. $100 on Cash App. I really appreciate that, Elaine. And let me drop a heart for you right there. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for your support, Elaine. All right, you guys, I'll be done for the night. I'm going to go eat dinner with Lisa, and then we're going to have a nice, relaxing evening. Probably going to walk the dogs. I've got actually quite a bit of pruning that I need to do outside. We've got a whole bunch of dead stuff from the freezes that we had. So I hope that you enjoy the rest of your night. I want to thank everybody for being here. Please, if you don't mind, hit that like button, hit the share button. It would really do a lot to help us out. And I also hope that I see you tomorrow right here at 5 p.m. once again on Red Pill News Live. So until that time, good luck and God bless. Peace.